It's been a while,
It's been a long while.
but we're back to talk nonsense into your ears.
We are very, very happy and thankful for the what seems like the eternal patience of our listeners. But thank you all for being active in the Discord chat for all this time that we've not been actively recording and putting out episodes for you.
Yeah, life has a way of kind of happening in between episodes sometimes, and a lot of life happened.
Indeed, it does. But without further ado, I am Antonio,
I'm Corey.
and this is PodThing, and we are back.
We
Hopefully,
are.
hopefully semi regularly. That would be nice.
I mean, yeah, we're targeting more regular. I'm not putting any time frames on that because we suck at making time frames.
We do, but we're going to try and for the lack of quantity you've been getting, we're going to try and increase the quality. We're trying to go towards. I mean, granted, all of our stuff has been pretty long form, but we're trying to go towards more long form content, so that way you'll get at least a couple of hours of us sitting here flapping our gums instead of 30 minutes and then waiting for another 3 months to figure out when we're going to sit down and talk for 30 minutes.
Yeah, we're trying to do more long form in that sense to where we're gonna give you a more quality episode, just not as often. But we're also there's going to be things in between. We talked about this in our update, and there's things still in the work that haven't come out yet. Other reasons for that we can update. One is all of my remaster files. Just a hard job to work through, so I'm trying to make sense of it because past me had no regard for how future me would look at my organizing of old episodes when it comes to year one of this project.
Future us, fuck those guys.
Yeah, the stuff I did with Nancy is hard to go through just because it makes no sense in the way we recorded. I don't know what I was thinking in having us record 20-minute segment, 10-minute segment, and piecing together with things in between. So, trying to figure out how to make sense of it all. It'll be around eventually.
And additionally, I'm sure you guys listened to our update if you did. We've got a bunch of side projects coming that have been in the works, and that has definitely taken a significant amount of time and planning. But hopefully, it'll be worth the wait and worth the effort.
Yep. I have changed. I have finally decided to name the sports show instead of the name I announced there. It's just going to be our sports thing. It's coming. It's in work. I have something planned to talk about for it. I'm waiting on something to happen before I can finish everything, and that's delayed it because current events never happen when you want them to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of impossible to compete with the constant flow of news that's flowing in. You get 16 updates on your phone in the course of 2 hours, and all of them might say something different. And then so it's difficult for us to be expected to maintain a cohesive narrative at best with all of the different amounts of information that are coming in at any given time.
Yeah, I had some sports audio actually laid and ready to go talking about everything with one current Cleveland Browns quarterback. But then more people step forward. Instead of 22 allegations, he's up to like 26 now.
Wham.
And more keep coming. So I just scrapped all of it and said, well, we're going to wait. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No,
Because,
today we are here to talk about all sorts of things and magic and mystical things and comic book things and other similar rantings.
yeah, talking and starting with game things. Because, it's been a while. We can talk about some of the stuff we've played, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's lots of game things to discuss.
Well,
For instance, I will say, semi recently, Steam had a sale, as Steam tends to do, and I picked up Cultist Simulator for around about $6. I think it was like 670 something. But I will say, if you like card games and you like figuring a lot of complex shit out for yourself, it is a great game. I have no way of describing it. I have no point of comparison to say that it is like this or like that. What I would say is that you draw cards and the cards start unfolding a story, and you have other cards and you can use those as you please, kind of like a bit of a game. It will determine whether you continue to move forward and start your cult or if you just die, and you will die a lot. It's not an actiony kind of game, but it's very narrative driven. The cards are not a side component of the game, they are the main component. So reading is a very important mechanic in the game, and the pause button is your very best friend because as soon as you lay down a card, a timer starts. So think of it more like chess with cards, with a story behind it. So you've got to really pause and read and calculate your next move. But it is very intriguing, and highly recommended if you can find it on sale. I dare say it's actually worth full price, but I picked it up on sale, so why shouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a
I've
game
also
I looked at. I looked at that game, I think, with you when before you purchased it. And I kind of regret I didn't grab it on sale. I bought something else instead. But I'll talk about that in a minute.
I've also recently dipped into the classic crate, and I was playing Overlord 2, which you guys might recall came out for Xbox 360. I don't know, 10 or so years ago, probably more at this point, honestly. But it's a fun game. It's if you feel a little evil and you just kind of don't really feel like playing the good guy or having the moral dilemma of starting another Skyrim run as an evil character, you could just play Overlord because you're supposed to be evil. So that's a lot of the fun of it, is sicking your minions on the townsfolk and kind of ruining things for everyone. So if you want some hilarity and shitting in someone's Cheerios for the day, Overlord's a good option, or Overlord 2 more specifically. Also played a Journey again recently. That was I'd forgotten what a lovely hour and a half that game. Really, it's just fantastic. Great art design, great everything. The music's wonderful. Nice resonant storyline that you can kind of make your own. So if you haven't played Journey, which you're pretty late on, I would highly recommend picking that up on Steam or any other download platform. I think it's about $14.99 on average, but I picked it up for $7.
Steam sales are a one of a kind thing, and you gotta love them. So I've got two games I kind of want to talk about. There might be a third that pops in my head at some point, but I want to talk about something I recently started playing. Um, it's a game called My Time at Sandrock. So, as all of you may know, I've been no stranger for admitting my love of games like Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley that kind of let you live out your own, kind of quote unquote, let you live out your own narrative. You have the will to kind of marry who you want, still within a set boundary for the game. You have a will to kind of do things in an order you want, and this game's much the same. It's a sequel to a game called My Time at Portia, and dare I say, having played Portia and Sandrock, and actually recently going back to Portia to compare, it's a leaps and bounds improvement. They've done away with the whole stamina meter thing, which is great, so you can just kind of run whenever you want. A lot easier to make your building instead of having to actually manually have everything in your inventory and put it in piece by piece. You can actually pull it from your storage now while you're building, which is great. Because again, the point of this game, much like its predecessor, is you are a builder in a town post-apocalyptic. So it's like this big thing happened, and you find like snippets of the past as you're adventuring through these caves that they have, where you can pick up like survivors' diaries and you read about what happened to them or what didn't happen to them. As the calamity happened where the skies went dark all over the place after random explosions and such. Then life rebuilds and you have a farm. But hey, My Time at Sandrock is a good game. I recommend it if you have time to kill. It is a good way to sink it in. I've enjoyed the building mechanics of it. I'm enjoying the little narrative. The characters in this game have a lot of charm. Keep in mind it is extremely early access, so you will experience bugs and crashes here and there, but the devs are super friendly and super great at like responding to them when you report them, which is awesome too.
Additionally, I will say also there's a game that's coming out at the time of this recording, about a month or so. And it is called Bear and Breakfast, and I've been raving about this game because I played the demo and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And they finally came out with a release date. They said it was going to come out on the tail end of 2022, and it seems like they're going to deliver. So the people over at Gummy Cat are going to be giving us Bear and Breakfast on July 28th on Steam. It's a Harvest Moon style simulator. You are a bear that runs a bed and breakfast out in the woods. And that is pretty much all I can say, because even based on the demo, I wasn't given a ton. But it seems to have a much deeper storyline. You've got a crafting system. You essentially rebuild a bed and breakfast out in the woods from nothing. And so yeah, it's really really charming graphics. I really love the art design. Dare say it's just really cute. I mean, so if you ever wanted to be a bear out in the woods, doing something other than shitting in it, yeah, this is. It seems like a really fun game, and you should definitely check it out. Also, I'm definitely late on this train as well, but I finally decided to play Genshin Impact, which for those of you who know, probably do, is very much like a Breath of the Wild copy of sorts, but it's free to play. It's filled with waifus. So if you're into waifus or Breath of the Wild, then that game very well may be for you. Breath of the waifus.
It's Breath of the Waifu. Yeah, no, Genshin's a lot of fun. I played it when it first came out. Haven't really picked it up much since. Might get back into it since you're playing it. We'll see. This may end up becoming a segment entirely on Genshin Impact every so often. But
Call it Waifu Wednesdays.
other game I want to mention I've been playing a lot of with some friends is a game called Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is a cooperative kind of high fantasy RPG card game. So you have different classes you can pick. You have about 100 and some odd scenarios you're going to run through, certain ones hidden by certain benchmarks, certain unlocks, and reputations, different events you can do that can either help or hinder you. Deck upgrades as you level up, you add new cards to your deck, which you can then kind of swap in and out. You can have a maximum of 10 in your hand at all times. To begin a game, cards get lost through a short rest, long rest system. The difference being with a long rest, you're out of a rotation, get some health back, pick the cards you lose instead of it being a random choice. It's a lot of fun. I have been playing it online on Tabletop Sim. You can also pick up a physical version of it because it is an actual board game, but it's expensive as shit. It's a couple $100, but there is a cheaper version which is more streamlined called War of the Lions, which is Gloom Light, essentially. That's how I learned how to play. Also a lot of fun, and it's a lot more affordable at about 25 to 50 depending on where you go. Or again, if you have Tabletop Sim, you can just download the mods.
It's funny, actually, speaking of tabletop sim, one thing I have actually been getting back into with this newfound time that I have, I've been getting back into all of my D&D stuff. So I've been on a bit of a mini painting rampage, going through my old guides and stuff, and basically, trying to settle back into, a more consistent dungeon master role, trying to get my worlds built so that I can get my players back at my table.
I am just waiting for Spelljammer's release because that's the next big module set coming out after Eberron and such. So I'm just waiting on that before I jump back into 5e because I have been working on adapting Spelljammer to 5e myself. And now that they're doing it officially, I'm just gonna wait. For those who don't know, Spelljammer is D&D in space. And you know how much space is a thing on this podcast. But nothing like a group of seafaring elves just hanging around being out there.
Yeah.
So the new Buzz Lightyear movie is apparently not doing well, or is it?
No, it did not do well its first weekend. I forget what it was. Stayed at the top.
I think it made 51 million because Jurassic Park or Jurassic World.
That's what it was.
World's
Yeah, it was.
Top, right?
I think it was one of the. I think it's the new Jurassic Park movie that's up there at the top still. But yeah, Lightyear apparently didn't do well. Chris Evans took over the role, which is not a bad thing. There was an interview actually recently as to, they asked him why Tim Allen didn't take it, and it's partially because of Disney going in a different direction. But Tim Allen is Buzz Lightyear the toy, not Buzz Lightyear the character. So there's that. But apparently Chris Evans drew a lot of inspiration from Tim Allen's performance as Buzz Lightyear in all the movies to really inform how he was going to go about it. I haven't heard anything negative about the movie. The only thing I've heard was that it just didn't do well this week on its opening week. But
which
I haven't heard. I mean that
being
that
up against Jurassic World.
Yeah, I suppose. Then the Disney finally, thank goodness, the Disney wasn't going to back down from different national censors in different countries like China and Saudi Arabia for certain depictions of LGBT activity, which is good. Finally, I mean, Disney bends over backwards a lot for foreign censors in the way that they make movies, even going so far sometimes as to make multiple versions of movies. So it's a good thing, in my opinion, at least. But then again, Western democracy. So what are you going to do?
Absolutely. I'm going to say though, I do think we're going to start going to start looking at movies and how they deal with the box office differently now, in these post-pandemic times. Mostly because of the advent of how popular now streaming service releases are. So, for example, I haven't seen Doctor Strange yet, but it comes up on Disney Plus in June. So, that's how I'm going to end up watching the new Doctor Strange movie is the day it comes up on Disney Plus, which is late June. I'm paying Disney a certain amount of money a month already to get access to their movie catalog. I don't see, and this is maybe just me, or maybe it's a lot of people who feel this way, is that I'm paying for all these streaming services in general. Why do I want to go to the movie theater to see a movie that, within 3 to 4 months is going to be on a streaming service somewhere?
It's funny, speaking of Disney Plus, especially because we were just talking about D&D and all of these fun things that we like. You know, a movie I revisited, The Black Cauldron. And I got halfway through it, and I'm like, man, The Black Cauldron has amazing animation. It's got a good storyline. Like, I wonder why this movie was such a flop. And then I watched the second half of it, and I was like, oh, that's why this movie was such a fucking flop. Because they don't resolve anything.
No, it has it has a lot going for it, and it's a beautifully done movie, and it's worth a watch any time. But yeah, it's one of the classic examples of falling apart in the second half.
Yeah, really. It's like it doesn't do a good job of resolving storyline. The animation was beautiful, the art style was great, and I think they really had the makings of a much larger tale, and they just didn't. Also, it was really funny too because I'm watching the creature sidekick Gurgi, and as I'm watching this, all I can think is like, man, he really looks like Andy, like he sounds like Andy Serkis from the Lord of the Rings movies in the early aughts. And I'm like, that's really funny. And so I went looking a little bit, and apparently the portrayal of Gurgi was based off of what the voice actor thought Gollum was supposed to sound like based on what they read in the books, and then Andy Serkis apparently interpreted his Gollum portrayal off of Gurgi from the Black Cauldron. So it's a copy of a copy of a copy.
Andy Serkis, not a bad Alfred either.
No, excellent Alfred.
But
and I'm glad for that too. I think that not that he doesn't have any serious roles, or he didn't have any other serious roles. Of course, it's just more like that.
A lot of people know him as a mocap actor.
Yeah, he's so well known, especially for just being Gollum. Like he's so well known for that role, and so to see him be able to branch out. Is he?
Venom. I'm sorry, he directed Venom's sequel, Let There Be Carnage. That's the movie I saw recently.
Oh, did he?
Yes, I actually watched that recently, and that's the movie he did. He was also a second unit director for The Hobbit.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
No. But yeah, but actually speaking of, that's something I saw recently too, when you want to talk about how different it is with Marvel Disney to Sony Disney. Look at Venom.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Because the Venom movies are really good, and now they do tie into the Spider-Man movies, but they have a different tone than the Disney Marvel. Speaking of Disney and Marvel, I did recently get myself a Marvel Unlimited subscription, which I need some things to read. Got some recommendations?
Great. If you want good Marvel series, these are the ones. Or if you want like a good Marvel story arc,
okay, so to preface, I have already read The Ultimates, which was fantastic.
Have you read House of M?
No, it's on my list. I have not.
Bro, House of M. House of M is so fucking good. It's literally the mutants making Krakoa and finally like creating their mutant stronghold, where they're like, we are no longer doing mutant registration. We are taking our place as a separate race of people. It is so flippin' good, dude. So good.
So I've always been more of a DC Comics reader myself than Marvel, so there's selectable things I've read. I mean, we talked about this, I don't know if we talked about it recorded, but I've read a bunch of Deadpool. I've read Deadpool, the 2011 run. I've read the Deadpool Kills. I've read a bunch of What If. I've read the Marvel 1616 stuff, which is really cool.
Some of that stuff is very cool. I like those. They've also got it's Spider-Man. Well, it's Marvel in general, but they've got like it's a 1702 or 1602 that they did. It was like they did a Spider-Man one, and it was like Peter Parkour.
Yes, that's the one. I thought it was 1616. No, it might be 1602. I don't know. But anyway, it takes place in like the 1600s, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Spider-Man Noir is excellent.
Spider-Man Noir was really good. I've read that.
Yeah, that particular series is great. I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man is always good.
I've read most. I've read up to basically the end of that, to the pre-Convergence thing they did.
Yeah, well, even before Convergence, I highly recommend old Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And it's not... Miles Morales, by the way, is one of my favorite Spider-Man. I love him. He's
I have read from Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1. It's one of the few ones that I've actually read that entire line through. I've read up from Peter's death, through Miles Morales, through to where it's basically ended the Ultimate line before he jumped to the mainline Marvel Universe.
Dude, Peter's death was heart-wrenching to read. It was so good, though. It was so well done. Like, they really just knocked it out of the park with that. It was
one of those moments where you're like, did they really just kill Spider-Man?
But not only did they kill Peter Parker, they killed Peter Parker as a minor child.
Yeah, they killed high school Peter Parker.
I'm like, wow! Like they really did that. I'm like, but I love stuff like that, dude. It's kind of like in the same vein as like for a little while because they stopped doing it, but they used to do a Marvel series called Marvel Max, and it was specifically for their more brutal characters like Wolverine and Deadpool. But like, dude, Marvel Max was kind of like an M rating on your comic book. If you picked up a Marvel Max comic, you knew you were gonna get some fucked up shit in there. Like you would get full, unabridged Wolverine slashing the shit out of people violence. You would see Wade Wilson outside of his Deadpool costume, and you would see his cancer-riddled body like in its fullness, and you're like, damn, dude, like they really are not. They're not pulling punches. They really pulled out all the stops to make it a gritty story. So I love that. I thought that was really cool. I like when comic book companies, especially because more often than not, unfortunately, comic books are like marketed to like kids as a juvenile endeavor or as a juvenile pursuit, and it's just kind of like, no, it's storytelling, and this is what you're gonna get. Like these characters are inherently violent. They're dealing with inherently gritty real world issues, and you're gonna get that unabridged and unadulterated. Like this is it. So I was a fan of that. But they got
some of those.
Yeah, but they got rid of the Marvel Max stuff a while back, and I get it, but at the same time, too, a lot of the mainstream Marvel stuff got a little grittier, so the need for Marvel Max wasn't necessarily there anymore.
Yeah, comic books have come a long way since the comic book code started and to modern day with what's actually shown, because modern Marvel comics, I mean, just from the few I'm reading currently, they show a lot more dark and gritty things. Hell, but Star Wars comics show things I didn't think to see in the Star Wars comic.
And even outside of the Marvel and DC stuff and a lot of the mainstream stuff, despite the comic code, there are some very, very graphic comic books that are readily available at your local comic book store. If you want something, if you're in the mood for something really adult, a borderline perverted, like read Belladonna. Belladonna is like, it's all of our listeners are adults. I'm sure you guys have kids. Don't ever buy your kids Belladonna. It's fucking porn. It's basically porn. There's a woman there, like one of the characters. It depicts her using her vaginal secretions to kill a man. She can control her vaginal secretions, and she solidifies it and like puts it through a dude's skull. That's how graphic Belladonna is, and that's a comic book, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. And you can buy it at your local store, really, truly. And I'm not, and it's not a criticism,
I mean, it's a
art is art. It's a disclaimer. It's a warning. It's because art is art. I'm all about whatever it is. It doesn't offend me in any way, shape, or form. I read it and I thought it was quite funny, but that's because I know how absurd it is. Other people, they might be clutching their pearls and stars and garters, all that bullshit. So
somebody
teach their own. Somebody's definitely gonna get upset.
I mean, it's comics, but that's always been what comics do as well. People get upset at comic books all the time.
Dude, people get upset at everything. I took a line from John DiMaggio's Bender, and I was at the grocery store the other day, and I was literally trying to buy some hot dog buns. And as I'm looking through the hot dog buns, and this is purely a child thing, because anyone who's been a kid or has a kid, which means everyone, would recognize this kind of behavior. Somebody put their thumbs through like 4 packs of hot dog buns out of the 5 packs of hot dog buns that were left. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, some fucking kid did this, And so I'm annoyed, and I looked at my partner, and I told her, I was like, babe, it just boggles the mind that people don't watch their kids at the grocery store. And there was a mom, I wagered she was a mom because she shot me a really nasty look after this comment, who's looking through the bread. And I'm like, has anyone ever just tried, taking their kids and sitting down with them and hitting them? And the lady shot me the nastiest fucking look. But dude, I was dying. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
So I got to give credit to John DiMaggio for that Bender line, because it definitely made my day to piss off an uppity mom at the grocery store.
No, I can imagine that would be, yeah.
But people are going to get offended no matter what you do.
No, absolutely, and that's the thing. In comic books, I mean, they've always pushed a boundary. That's why they had to make the comic code, because it was too graphic for them then. Now we have comics, there's some of them where Mary Jane died of cancer from radioactive spider contact.
Oh man, yeah, that was an arc in the 90s with it was a complex time in Spider-Man storyline, because he was Ben Reilly, but he had he had become Peter Parker. He was going by the name Peter Parker, but he was still wearing the Scarlet Spider costume with the cut up hoodie in the red. which I love that costume, by the way. Fan favorite
design.
That is
a really good Spider-Man costume.
That's literally up there in my top 3 favorite Spider-Man costumes. But so he's having an argument with Mary Jane in their apartment. She's really upset with him, and they're having a really nasty argument. And she basically is saying that the reason that something's wrong with her womb and that something's wrong with her baby is because of Peter's goddamn irradiated blood. And like that's a low fucking blow, for any kind of fight, between a spouse. But like I'm like, yo, this is Spider-Man. I'm like, I'm a kid. I was like maybe an 8-year-old kid, and I'm reading this and I'm like, damn. I'm like, alrighty then. Like, this is a thing.
Yep, radioactive spider splooge.
Oh my god. Coming to cervical cancer near you, radioactive spider splooge.
Those are comics. Marvel's had some good runs. I'm not as familiar with some of their history, as I said. I've read some.
Dude.
I've tried reading the Ultimate X-Men run. I didn't enjoy it.
Oh no, I didn't like that one either. But the thing is, too, dude. No, listen. No, I've always found that this is one of those more toxic things in the nerd community. Is that you always get like those people who are very reminiscent of Comic Book Guy from The Simpsons, where they just assume that, if you're a nerd or if you're a fan, you're supposed to know everything. And it's like, dude, nerds are multifaceted. I'm a comic book nerd, but I'm also a Star Wars nerd and a Star Trek nerd and a D&D nerd and a fantasy novel nerd. I cannot be expected to understand or retain every ounce of minutia in the lore. It's not feasible for a person to be like that. So like, you don't need to give the disclaimer of like, oh, I'm not well. Dude, nerds are nerds. Everyone likes what they like, and everyone knows what they know. It's kind of like those people with like the Star Wars. Like, I'm a Star Wars fan, and they're like, oh well, what with Princess Leia's third child's name in the fourth galactic arc of the expanded universe? I'm like, dude, fuck off. Like, no one can be expected to know all this dumb shit.
You just tell them it's not canon, so it doesn't matter.
Oof, yeah, but that hurts me because I like the expanded universe because it was canon. Don't get me started.
Give
fucking
some
Disney
pulling some of the characters from EU though into becoming actual canon characters.
I'm glad that they used the Timothy Zahn, the Timothy Zahn's Thrawn series. I thought they did a good job with that, and I'm happy for it. But I think that there were so many of those books that got licensed, that got the LucasArts stamp of approval, so they were canonical. They just wiped it. And then they had the audacity when people were complaining that the stories were not original or the stories sucked or that that fucking Daisy Ridley's character is a Mary Sue, all of that stuff, and they're like, oh well, we just don't have this massive pool of storyline to pull from. We just don't have it, and it's like, yeah, you fucking do. How about 30 years of universe that George Lucas gave everyone to play in that he licensed? But no, we forget about all of that because heaven forbid anyone remembers a time before Disney.
Look, man, the best thing that ever happened, the worst thing about Star Wars is Star Wars fans and Disney. Those are the two worst things about Star Wars.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's crazy to say it, but Star Wars fans are the most toxic is one of the most toxic fan groups in the world, because if they don't like something, even if you like that aspect of Star Wars, they're gonna jump on you.
It's because they're looking for a fight, dude. They're always just looking for a fight.
Yep, and then Disney Star Wars movies. Rogue One was pretty good.
Rogue One was good. Episode 7 was tolerable. Episode 8 was garbage. Episode 9 was garbage. That's just that's how I see it. So as far as I'm concerned, there's only 6 Star Wars movies and Rogue One.
So that's Solo.
I'm not going out of my way to watch episodes. I haven't seen Solo yet, so I can't say anything about Solo.
Solo's a tough one. I like it as a movie. If it wasn't Han Solo, it'd be better. I appreciate that the character, that the actor who played Han in that movie basically had to learn Harrison Ford's mannerisms as playing the character. Solo as a movie canonizes a fact about Han that we all know and love that Lucas changed in episode 4 when he did the re-edits.
Mm-hmm.
Solo canonizes that Han shoots first and explains why Han shoots first. And then you go back after watching, so I'm going on this rant because, damn it, I've been going through Star Wars in canon order recently. So we started at episode 1 and we're working our way through movies. So I watched Solo, Rogue One, now I'm on watched episode 4. And in episode 4, Han doesn't shoot Greedo first in all the stupid Lucas edits. But in Solo, Han shoots first. Just gonna put that.
Fair enough. I mean, if I can make a comment though, this has nothing to do specifically with Star Wars.
Absolutely.
But this has more to do with Harrison Ford. I've been watching a couple of movies with Harrison Ford like back in the day. So I took some time off and I watched both Blade Runner movies back to back. something occurred to me when I watched the Blade Runner movies, and it's the same thing that occurred to me when I watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in theaters and when I watched Episode 7 for Star Wars. Harrison Ford, even when playing his characters that he played in the past, does not bring the same energy or the same cockiness to those characters anymore. He is a new kind of typecast. He is good at playing, and this isn't to say that Harrison Ford is a wash-up. I'm not saying that at all. But it seems like his new character archetype is the old grizzled washout. And I don't necessarily like it. Because I watched the new Indiana Jones, or the newest Indiana Jones.
Because I thought the new one's coming like next year.
Yeah, so with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it was Kay. He's not as young as he used to be, so he can't bring back that same indie magic. But it's almost like he doesn't want to be there.
I reckon in Star Wars he didn't. He came back, took the money, did the role, and said, "I want nothing to do with it." That's why they killed Han Solo off. He didn't want anything else to do with it.
But I felt the same energy out of the Indiana Jones franchise, where he just didn't care anymore. And it's kind of the same thing with the Blade Runner. Like, I watched Blade Runner, and I love that movie. And then I watched Blade Runner 2049. As I'm watching that, and he appears on screen, and don't get me wrong, he did the best he could with what he was given as far as like his lines and the way they did the movie, and it was good. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, is this the same Deckard? Am I really watching the same Deckard? Because this doesn't seem to it's not the same vibe overall. And I know it was a Ryan Gosling movie, it wasn't a Harrison Ford movie, but like, again, it just didn't seem like the same vibe was there. It was just kind of this overall idea that, like, this feeling he didn't care. Again, it's not a criticism. He did just fine. In all of those films, he did just fine. Sure. When we're looking back at the old magic of what was Harrison Ford, doing, cracking funny jokes, where it just seems like he's tired, and aside, more than just his age. Like, it just seems like he's tired. Like, he's tired of being an actor.
That could be part of it. I think it also may just be that he doesn't want to maybe he doesn't want to revisit old characters. I don't know what brought him back. It had to be the script for the new Indiana Jones movie, because I absolutely hated Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I didn't hate it. I only have one real complaint about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I do this sometimes. Like, I'll watch these movies and I'll rewrite the scenes in my head to how I feel they should have been. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, when I bounce them off of people, they tell me that mine's better, and I'm okay with that. It's not a brag. It's just I imagine a lot of people just have similar criticisms of these kinds of things. My only big bitch about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the end scene. I didn't even care about the aliens. It was obvious that they were really trying to lean on this alien thing, and that was fine. I was okay with that. There are plenty of kinds of, like, historical lore that point to, like, oh, this might be aliens, and everyone's kind of run with that as a conspiracy theory. So I don't think anyone had an issue with that per se. My complaint is that it's the same thing as, like, Signs. Signs was an incredible movie, and it was a great thriller, until you see the alien in the kitchen and Joaquin Phoenix is swinging a baseball bat at him. The movie was fantastic until you showed me the alien face to face, because now it's not scary anymore. Now it's not mysterious anymore. And it's the same thing with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. When all of the 14 alien skeletons coalesce and kind of dig into the Russian scientist military officer's mind, and all of them coalesce and you see the full alien, like, it looks like a gray, the stereotypical gray alien.
Right.
And you see that, I'm like, now this is fucking lame. Now this movie is just completely lame. Like, and they did a good job between the musical score, the way that they tried to set things up, and the way they set the cameras up. They really tried to recreate that classic Indiana Jones magic. And I appreciate all of the effort that they did. But, like, that last scene where you just see the alien, and I'm like, dude, that's it, you lost me. You just shit all over the movie. Like, even at the end where the spaceship takes off, even that I could swallow, but it's just like, once you took the mystery out of it, like, I don't care anymore. Because, like, it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, yeah, you see a bunch of ghosts. Did you see Moses pop out and fucking do all this shit? No. You see freaking God come down from on high fucking quoting scripture? No. Because I didn't fucking need any of that. I don't need that to make my brain work and put the pieces together and say, oh, this is what's going on. So it's like that.
In older movies, like, it's alluded to that it's some mysterious force. They could have panned away just like in an older movie and not shown the alien, and it maybe have kept some of that mystique about it. Same in
exactly.
Signs, I do agree that it ruined the movie in Signs. I also think a movie that along the lines of those that you're talking about that actually it ruined me with. Now this kind of goes with Signs. They have the same director, but did you ever see The Village?
Yeah, I saw The Village. I don't remember much of it because honestly, I wasn't impressed. Like
That movie got
the
ruined
spoiler
as
came
soon as
out.
you find out that it's just a secluded community. It's when it gets ruined.
I want to say ruined. It's just like the presentation overall. But M Night Shyamalan as a director, like he does this with things. He has an amazing premise. It's a great. I'm gonna compare M Night Shyamalan to Stephen King, but not for the same reasons and not in the same way. Because Stephen King is a very high caliber of author. He doesn't end things well, and he himself has said it. Like was it The Fog?
God, fuck.
Was that hit?
The ending of The Dark Tower was fucking awful. I'm going to say it. I love that book series. It is probably my favorite. Seven complete books. The Dark Tower series is fucking phenomenal. If you have not read it, go find The Gunslinger. It's the first book. Just read it. The ending pissed me off. And it's admitted because it's a Stephen King series. It's going to have a possibility of it. But it's a cop-out. And it's my biggest complaint of his works that I've read. I'm done. I'm not spoiling it because I don't know if anyone actually cares enough to read it. But I'm still mad about that ending almost 20 years after the final book coming out. And I haven't reread it since. I haven't reread the final book since because that ending pissed me off so much. So did him writing himself into the fucking book, but that's a whole different story.
If I'm not mistaken, though, because and I'm double checking now here at my terminal just to see. Was it The Fog? That was the Stephen King book?
The Mist.
The Mist. Thank you. Yes. The Mist. So Stephen King himself said that the Mist movie was better than his book because it finished it. It wrapped everything up much, much better than he did. He himself to a certain extent, admits that he's not a great closer. He's not a strong closer. And that's, I don't want to say it's fine because it's not fine. You need to wrap your endings up better, but he's still an incredible author. He captures you with a story, but his endings are not great.
Stephen King himself doesn't actually know how his books are going to end as he starts writing them either, which is why he's so weak about it, because at some point he's like, I have to end this somehow.
So with M. Night Shyamalan, it's kind of the same. He starts the story off really strong, and he gives you this really intriguing premise, and you're like, wow, I really want to know more. Like, tell me more about this world. Tell me more about what's going on here. This is brilliant. And then it just turns to shit. Like Lady in the Water. Dude, that was one of the strongest, most mysterious openings where you had like a dark fantasy where the fantasy world is permeating into the real world. And I thought that was a really, really great premise that it started with. But then it got fucking ridiculous. You got the guy who's lifting half the weights to be make it half his body bodybuilder while the other one is scrawny. Dude, the movie sucked. When you start fucking with your endings like that because you're just so dedicated to the fact that you have to have a plot twist. Robot Chicken did a great job on satirizing. What a twist! What a twist! And it's like, dude, but your twist is garbage.
His first two movies, it worked out pretty well in. Signs and The Sixth Sense worked pretty well.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and I like that. But again, Signs did not do a good job once it showed you the alien, and it's the same thing with Lady in the Water. I didn't like that, and creating a twist does not necessarily make it good. You're M. Night Shyamalan. You're not Martin Scorsese. I'm very sorry to tell you this. Stop fucking trying. Like it's not good. The story is not good.
No, and Scorsese's twists at least aren't. Not every Scorsese movie has a twist. That's the beautiful
right.
part.
Exactly.
Because you do it in every movie, everybody expects you to always have a twist, and you wonder why you're not a box office draw anymore. I think the most original thing he did was the last couple of movies he did with Glass and all that. Those were pretty good.
Well, I think people try too hard. Like one of the problems with a lot of modern movies and modern cinema is that it seems that they're trying so hard to force subversion of expectation. But the problem is, you have to be good at it. You have to be good at subverting my expectation, because if every single thing that I see in modern media is expected to be a subversion of my expectations, then my expectations are at the fucking floor. I don't have any expectations, so they're very easy to subvert because I don't give you any credit anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, I wonder what your big plot twist is going to be. And so now instead of watching the movie and being taken with it and letting the story carry me away,
what your plot twist is.
Exactly. I'm sitting there the whole time with my arms crossed, and I'm just going, okay, what's going to happen here? And I go, oh, I bet there's going to be a jump scare here. And 2 seconds later, sure enough, there's the jump scare. And I'm like, oh, I bet this guy's going to get shot in the head. There it is. Even at the very beginning, when they introduce a character, my first thought, because of the way that they portray it and the way they do the foreshadowing, I'm like, this guy's going to betray everybody in the end. You just watch. And sure enough, there it is. So you tried so hard to subvert my expectations and try to do artistic foreshadowing that you were just as lame and predictable as you thought you shouldn't be.
No,
And that's all we get out of it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it is. It seems that Hollywood hasn't had an original idea in decades because everything's getting rebooted, remade, and redone. I mean,
Dude, the last original movie to come out was fucking Inception, and even that wasn't super original because that comes off of like other sci-fi premises. But still, I would say Inception is probably one of the most original movies, if not the last original movie to come out in a very long time.
absolutely, and that's the thing. There's not much originality because anymore, your box office is what you have: the superhero movie of the month, the horror movie of the month, the kids movie of the month, and they all follow a same basic formula.
Actually, you know what? No, I have to change what I just said too. You know who's actually done an excellent job of trying to bring some semblance of originality back to a good in-depth storyline?
Who we got?
Jordan Peele.
Oh,
dude,
absolutely.
he's fucking killing it. He does such a great job. I love I've been following Jordan Peele since he was doing Key and Peele with Keegan Michael Key. Like it's awesome. I love what Jordan Peele has been doing as a director and as a writer. His stuff is great, and I think that right now he's probably the most original person in Hollywood as far as putting out movies from what I've seen recently.
Him and I would say Taika. I can't ever say his name. Taika Waititi. I can never say it correctly. And
what movie? What movie?
So he's the director of the most recent Thor movies. He did the last Thor one, and he did Thor. He's doing Thor: Love and Thunder. But those aren't the movies I'm talking about to make it original. Now, those are good comic book movies. But have you seen Jojo Rabbit?
I haven't, but I want to so bad, dude. That's been on the top of my list for a couple of years. It's just been a lack of time. I haven't had a chance, but I heard it's very dark, and I heard it's very funny.
It is absolutely dark and funny, and it's an original concept. I mean, the kid's imaginary friend is Hitler.
Yeah, that's pretty psycho.
And Hitler is, by the way, the person who plays Hitler is the director himself.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, and I heard great things about Jojo Rabbit. Like,
that was good.
But
Knives Out was predictable, but it was also pretty good.
I didn't watch Knives Out yet. I've been hearing a lot of rave reviews about that, and I like Daniel Craig, so I'll check it out. I like most things Daniel Craig is in. I think he's a great. Yeah. That's a whole separate conversation, but I think he's a phenomenal actor, and I like most everything that Daniel Craig is in.
Yeah, so there's some good original kind of movies. They still follow basic tropes that we all know and expect, but they're doing it a little differently. But then you get your movies like your Top Gun Mavericks that have recently come out, or your sequel of the weeks, or your franchise that's getting a new movie 30 years later, a la Bill and Ted.
Yeah, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in Top Gun Maverick, and it's not because I don't love Top Gun. Because I mean, Top Gun was one of those movies that really kind of like made me want to be in the military. It's one of the reasons I got into military aviation when I did it. And so I love Top Gun for what it is. But to me, Top Gun is kind of a standalone. It didn't need a sequel, and this is kind of fan service. I think the most original thing they've done with Top Gun Maverick, from everything I've heard, is that Penny Benjamin is his love interest, and I think that's a nice nod. I think that's a really cool nod to just that one line at the beginning of the movie when they talk about doing the flyovers, like, for doing an unauthorized low pass over a control tower and one admiral's daughter, and then Anthony Edwards leans like, Penny Benjamin. I thought that's a great nod. I love that they did that. That's great story building.
So Val Kilmer's in the movie, I've heard they used AI to recreate his voice. Yeah, so
interesting.
Maybe if the listeners don't know, Val Kilmer can't talk. He lost his voice essentially with cancer.
Yeah, and you can and for
there's
not
actually a really really good documentary on Amazon about it called Val that he did himself, and it's really really good, but it'll get to you.
And I can't say for certain like what's going on. Like for instance, like with the progression of it, and I didn't know at the time because the movie came out I think in 2003. I want to say, I'll double check, but in Alexander with Colin Farrell, Val Kilmer, he played King Philip, his father, Philip of Macedonia. Val Kilmer, to me, I watched the movie in theaters. Even as a kid, I knew who Val Kilmer was because I'd seen him in Batman in '95 and I'd seen him in Top Gun, on DVD. Of course, I wasn't born in '86. I recognized Val Kilmer. I knew who he was. He's a very famous actor. Mm-hmm. And when he got on screen as Philip of Macedonia, I'm like, dude, my first thought was like, I know from the movie poster that Val Kilmer was in the movie, and I was looking for him throughout the entirety of the film, and I didn't see him. Like, I did not recognize him. And I don't know if it's just because of age or if it's because of the cancer, but, like, I didn't even recognize his voice. Like, I just didn't recognize him as a person, as that being Val Kilmer. I was like, wow. It's really shocking when you see some of these people. And I will say this, that's probably the only movie where I liked Jared Leto.
Yeah, I could see that. And speaking of Val Kilmer, Jared Leto, and Batman in general, there was a new Batman movie that came out.
There was a new Batman movie that came out, and I have to say that was pretty damn good. It's not quite so comic booky. It's nice and gritty. Robert Pattinson does a great job, but like, yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was very, very good. With regard to the Batman movie, I really liked it. I liked that it was a gritty noir film. I thought that was great. I love seeing Batman in more human roles. Really doing the detective work as opposed to just being like a super awesome, semi-invincible genius superhero all the time. But it was interesting because it's kind of like that bad storytelling where this is supposed to be kind of like his first or one of his first forays out. And like, I'm glad they used the Riddler. I thought that was great. They didn't kind of overemphasize the Joker, which not for nothing because I know that the Joker is, his all-time villain. However, I'm really fucking tired of seeing the Joker all the damn time. I think it's played out. It also was interesting to see the Joker locked up in Arkham with the Riddler at the end, but that also suggests that he'd already caught the Joker previously, because it certainly wasn't the cops.
And people are generally aware of who the Batman is in this movie already, so it's not like he's unknown. It's just earlier Batman career.
Yeah. So, and I thought that was good. I'm also kind of afraid that they're going to play up a sequel where it's going to be something obvious where like, oh yeah, now we're getting the Joker and the Riddler. Like, so more of the same?
Yeah, DC's got a spotty track record with movies because you've got this going on. You have the Flash movie, which, whether or not Ezra Miller's Flash movie will actually come out given their personal struggles and things happening, we won't, that's a whole nother issue, a whole nother topic, a whole nother show. With that movie apparently having two different Batmans in it. Apparently it's going to have Batfleck and Michael Keaton. So we're going to get 3 separate incarnations of Batman within a few years of each other on screen.
But is this supposed to be like a Flashpoint thing? And there's another,
Yes.
That's the other issue too, is that, and DC as an entity, it's not just like Warner Brothers or whoever's putting out the content nowadays, but like
No, it's
DC with their story writing, when I worked at the comic book store, we would always talk about these kinds of things because, of course, we're all fans. Otherwise, we wouldn't, working at a comic book store. We read the content and we're just kind of like, dude, this is lame. Like, we know what's going to happen every single time something goes on in their universe that they can't explain, or where they blew something up, or there's really no coming back from it. You can almost always bet on universe reset, time travel, or parallel universe. And I'll tell you what, man, it's fucking lame. It's lazy writing, it's not well done, and it's fucking lame. But it's every single time you can set your watch to it, dude. Crisis on Infinite Earths, and the list goes on. Crisis on Infinite Earths, Flashpoint, Rebirth, all of it. It's constant time travel, parallel universe reset. And it's the same shit every time. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Which origin story are we giving Batman this time? Like, and I've had enough. And what's also interesting to me is that like, and I understand because Frank Miller, his iteration of Batman has given so much to the franchise, and it has, and it's something that is time honored and rightfully so. But like, dude, for anyone who wasn't in the know, like the true nerdy comic book know about background and lore, people would not be criticized. You couldn't criticize people for mistaking Frank Miller as the creator of Batman rather than Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Right.
It's like
so Frank Miller's Batman resonates because the design he did on that suit with the bigger bat emblem and just the run for the Dark Knight Returns series. What is it? Dark Knight Returns, the Dark Knight.
It was year one. It was year one and Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Returns is one of my favorite Batman series. That whole first 2 parts of it. You have the Dark Knight Returns and the Dark Knight Again, or the second one that came out where he fights against Superman and shit. The third, I haven't read the third chunk they did in like the 2010s.
But like,
and then Year Zero is really fucking good.
But it was just kind of, like I said, it's getting a little played out where like it seems like every Batman iteration that they put out, and again, this isn't a criticism of Frank Miller's story, but what I'm getting at is that you have like all these iterations of Batman, whether animated or live, and they're so derivative of Frank Miller's Batman, and I'm like, dude, we didn't need to do all of this. Like, how many... It's like watching old Spider-Man movies. When we watched the Tobey Maguire one, we're like, great, this is Spidey's origin story. And then we got Garfield, and we're like, okay, this
Spidey's
is
origin
Spidey's
story.
origin story, and it's Tom Holland. And I haven't seen the Tom Holland films, and I know
You
it's a cardinal sin,
you don't get the
to have not
origin
watched.
story. So at least with the Tom Holland
Good.
movies, it picks out with Spider-Man already being Spider-Man. It
Thank
basically
goodness.
picks up from him showing up in Civil War. His movies take off from there through his other appearances and doesn't establish anything from him becoming Spider-Man, which I like, because I don't need to see it. You know, we're talking about this, and we talked about this briefly before recording, we're actually just talking about Batman rebooting and the different Batmans. I had mentioned to you offline that I had started reading the Spider-Man, I guess we could basically call it the Spider-Man reboot series of Superior Spider-Man, and how well done that's been so far comparatively to, the reboot origins of Bruce Wayne. I'd rather, and yes, albeit we've gotten it in books, we have gotten Dick Grayson Batman. We've seen it.
Yeah, but Dick Grayson's taken up the cowl multiple times since the '80s. Like that's been a consistent theme for him.
Give me that. Give me Dick Grayson Batman. Give me more of that than just rebooting Bruce Wayne again when, hey, the time's right to reboot Batman again.
And for those listeners who don't know, what Corey's referring to with regard to the Spider-Man reboot series. So, Amazing Spider-Man, a couple years ago, they did a run, and it stopped at Amazing Spider-Man issue 700. And then after that, no spoilers, just it's a Spider-Man reboot. If you haven't read it, I would suggest you go find an edition or a trade paperback and read it yourself.
Or you can subscribe and read it digitally through Marvel. That's what I did.
Or that, but the Amazing Spider-Man issue 700 is a true tearjerker story. It's fantastic.
Yes.
But it leads into a series called Superior Spider-Man, in which Peter Parker's body is inhabited by Otto Octavius. And it sounds weird at first, but I'll tell you what, it is probably one of the best Spider-Man stories, and I think they ran that run for about 2 years, year and a half-ish.
Something like that. Yeah, I think I did it in 18.
Yeah, and it was really good. It was really, really good. It's about 31 issues, and it's just a great Spider-Man run, and I think it's one of the best iterations of Spider-Man since probably, I want to say maybe the Ben Reilly times. It's definitely one of the better ones. So I highly recommend that you should check it out. If you want to see a darker, grittier Spider-Man, definitely take a look at Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun reading it so far. I think I'm maybe 5 or 6 issues in because I've been reading other things I've missed out on through it recently. And yeah, but if you want to talk about a reboot done for a character in modern times, that's a good way to do it because you already know who Peter Parker and Spider-Man are. There's not much new you can do, but doing it this way is a great it was a great jumping on point for me, who was like, I haven't read a Spider-Man comic in years.
But getting back to the Batman thing too, I think I have a lot of criticisms for the way that they present Batman because Batman is such a strong character. I just feel like as much as I enjoy some of the movies that they've come out with, it's really difficult to get it done right without them kind of shitting the bed. So we got Keaton, of course, in 89 and 92 for those two first films. And then we got Val Kilmer in 95. And then in 98, they gave us George Clooney. And all of those were supposed to be the same respective Batman throughout that whole thing.
And not even that. They gave us in 98 the nipples. You can't forget about the Batman.
No. The nipples came out in 95. I rewatched Batman Forever recently, and the nipples were on Val Kilmer's outfit.
Okay.
So, yeah. So we definitely got the nipples in 95. I think they were just more noticeable because both Chris O'Donnell and George Clooney got nipples, and they had that suit-up scene because the director had changed. Tim Burton stopped working on Tim Burton stopped working on the series after Batman Returns.
Yeah, that's it. It was Joel Schumacher who did
Forever and Batman and Robin. And Joel Schumacher's intros for both of those movies were Batman going to his armory and picking up weapons and kind of gearing up. And so because he did those intros, you saw the nipples when Val Kilmer puts on the suit for the first time, and they did it with Clooney and O'Donnell as well. So there was that. Although I will say, not for the sake of being vulgar, just for the sake of equality and pointing out a silly joke, we didn't get Alicia Silverstone Batgirl nipples, so what the hell?
I mean, arguably the worst Batgirl. Alfred's fucking niece Batgirl.
I will say, though, that Alfred was phenomenal. He was Alfred
absolutely.
for 10 fucking years.
Oh, yeah, he was Alfred from Batman through Batman and Robin.
Yeah, so he was great. But so my point here being, though, when I bitch about these things, it's like, okay, so we got two Keatons, we got a Kilmer, we got a Clooney, and all of those were supposed to be the same character, even though they didn't portray the character the same way. So you've got a bunch of different Batmen. And then right after that, they give us Christian Bale. They give us two great movies and one piece of shit. And then after that, we go straight to Batfleck. And then now we've got Robert Pattinson. And it's not
Robert
like
Pattinson. Yes.
But
we had Batfleck and now we have Pattinson.
Yeah, so we get that, and I don't mind because those are good characters, but it's just kind of one of those things of like, how many times are you going to shove Batman's origin story down my fucking throat? Like, we all know, even if you've never read a Batman comic, just a kid that grew up in the 90s watching the Kevin Conroy Batman, like, dude, we all fucking know how Batman's origin story plays out. We don't need to see it again on a movie that someone wasted tens of millions of dollars of their internal budget on. Right. We know. We all fucking know.
If you know how Superman's story starts, you've basically got Batman's origin too. They're basically very similar. Just one isn't leaving a planet, one stays on Earth.
Yeah, so it's and it's just kind of like it's a lack of creativity that comes with it. And I get it, like actors age. You know, maybe Batfleck wasn't the best idea going past 2 movies, but I liked Ben Affleck as Batman. No, and it's kind of like
choice.
It's kind of like the Keaton formula, because my understanding is, and granted, you know, the 89 was the birth of the savior, i.e. the year I was born. Haha. So, you know, I didn't know Michael Keaton as an actor and too much else besides Batman, because from the day I was born, I got him as Batman. What I've been told from people who were, you know, around before then, they were like, yeah, Michael Keaton was kind of like a Ben Affleck. He was doing all these other movies, like rom-coms and other things. And when it was said that he was going to be Batman, people were like, no, he's not going to make a good Batman. But when you look at the 4, what we're going to call classic, or the 3 classic Batmen, Keaton's the best one. Hands down.
Absolutely. You know, Michael Keaton was, and I think it's and
it's the same thing with Ben Affleck, though. Like, he did a bunch of rom-coms, and he was in Dogma and a bunch of the Kevin Smith movies, and so, like, you know, we see him in a certain light. Yeah, we see him in a certain light, but he was a phenomenal Batman. I thought he did a great job.
No, I honestly appreciated Batfleck, and I wish we would have gotten the solo Batfleck movie, because I would love to see that, because it's confirmed the Joker in his timeline is Jason Todd that died. He even confirmed it, that the Joker, that even though it's the Jared Leto Joker, killed Jason Todd.
Yeah, but the fact that it's the Jared Leto Joker, no joke, I wager it's actually the fact that it's the Jared Leto Joker that was supposed to be his that killed it, because after Jared Leto's career took a crap with the whole thing that happened with Margot Robbie on Suicide Squad, I'm pretty sure that was a nail in the coffin for Ben Affleck's movie with the Joker as a feature, because you see him at the end of the Snyder Cut for the Justice League movie. Jared Leto's Joker is there at the end of the credits scene, and so like that's a whole thing in and of itself. But like even in that scene, I looked at it and I didn't like him. I don't like Jared Leto as the Joker.
I don't like him as the Joker at all. I don't like Jared Leto as an actor at all. So I think I was already predisposed to not like his appearance as the Joker, which is sad for a solo Batfleck film. But now we have Batman. And I will say, I kind of want to go back toward the movie though, because one thing I do appreciate, and as you're talking about all these other actors, is Batman's also playing 2 roles. You have to play Batman, and you have to play Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this movie, the way that at least Pattinson's portrayal is that Batman's the real identity, Bruce Wayne's the cover. Not like everyone else who plays it the other way.
You think so? Because I didn't see it that way. I feel like it's always been implied that Batman is Bruce Wayne's true identity. Like Bruce Wayne is the alter ego in the whole equation.
So maybe the Christian Bale movies, not so much. You could tell that you also look at how much Bruce himself was featured as a character in the other movies compared to Batman, where in this one you did have a lot more Bruce Wayne scenes, I guess, than I was normal or accustomed to seeing in a Batman movie.
I mean, maybe, yeah, because I didn't upon rewatching, you don't really get much Bruce Wayne. Like, I think the Batman movie that you see the most Bruce Wayne, honestly, was the first one. It was the '89 Batman, where, and you know, like that. I think that was the of what we'll call the classic ones. I think that's the one where you actually get the most Bruce Wayne as a person outside of like Batman. I mean, that's you know, that's what I think, at least. It was just that '89 one. After that, you don't really get much Bruce Wayne at all. Like,
that's
I think,
it.
Yeah, the most Bruce Wayne you get out of like in Batman Returns, the most Bruce Wayne you got was when he got hurt and he was taking off the costume and he's pulling Catwoman's claws out of himself, and then when he's at the gala, the Shrek gala with Selena Kyle, and then it's kind of the big reveal that like, oh, you're Catwoman, I'm Batman. Now do we have to start fighting, kind of thing. And then the end scene with Alfred in the car, and I'm sure there's like little onesies and twosies somewhere in there. You don't really get much Bruce Wayne out of the Batman movies. I think Christian, outside of that first one, I think the Christian Bale ones is where you get the most of it because he's got to do the whole thing with Starlets.
And the way he more plays Bruce Wayne is, I don't know, it seems like he's more comfortable as Bruce Wayne. Does that make sense? It feels like when he plays Bruce, he's more comfortable as Bruce, where it seems like Pattinson's portrayal of Batman as Bruce was he's not comfortable being Bruce.
Yeah, no, I'd give you that.
Maybe I guess it's showing for different side stages of the career, but I say that, but it's also the fact that in Batman Begins, he was comfortable being Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, he was good at playing a rich douchebag, but I mean, then again, after being, Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, it makes sense that Christian Bale would be pretty well versed in playing a rich. I mean, if we're going to talk about Batman real quick too, if you're a fan of Batman, the game Sifu, I just discovered by trolling through YouTube, just looking for random things. Apparently, there's a Batman skin in Sifu, so if you want to actually take a Batman character and run him through a triad-controlled Chinese slum, beating the crap out of people with kung fu moves, there it is for you.
Speaking of Batman and such, there's one thing I do want to mention that I wish we got, and it's continuing in comic form. Have you seen the Batman '89 comics?
Yeah. There was like a trade paperback kind of thing for it, but I mean, you meant for the movie, right? The comic iteration of the movie.
There's a run going on, and I don't know if it still is, that actually continued on after Batman Returns, and Batman takes a Robin, and the Robin, I believe, looks like Marlon Wayans. And yeah, it continues on in comic form.
Interesting. No, I haven't seen that. As a
continuation of that specific universe, where it actually has their version of Harvey Dent, which was Billy D. Williams as Two-Face.
Yes. And I do remember.
Loved to have seen him as Two-Face.
I would have liked to see Billy D. Williams as Two-Face. I like what Tommy Lee Jones did with the character. The fact that it was the same universe and it was the same continuity, and they gave us Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent. When they made those first two movies, and they continued to use Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent, they had to have known that we were going to expect Billy D. Williams to be Two-Face.
Right.
And then they just... and I don't know what the reasons were. I'm sure there might have been some kind of pricing issue. Regardless, we didn't get Billy D. Williams as Two-Face. We got something else. We got Tommy Lee Jones, then Jim Carrey, that was something else.
We did get William Shatner as Two-Face.
Did we? When was this?
Alright, so there are two DC animated movies that are both continuations of Batman 66.
Okay.
And in the second one, Two-Face is born, and it's William Shatner as Two-Face, and, of course, Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin.
Oh, God.
Yes. It's everything you're imagining it being right now.
So terrible.
No, it's a DC animated movie. It's fucking fantastic.
Oh, man.
But the voicing is exactly what you expect from Adam West and William Shatner being in a cast having to play opposite each other.
Goodness.
But if you're a fan of camp, it's there. It's great. And that is one thing DC does have a market on. Their live-action movies may be very, very hit or miss, but man, are their animated movies great.
Oh, I've been binging a lot of their animated stuff recently. It's been a whole thing. There are maybe a very small handful of Batman properties that are on HBO Max that I have not watched yet. I actually just rewatched the entire animated series. And I'll tell you what.
I'm in the middle of it right now, actually.
Fun fact, if anyone remembers, the rating for Batman animated series when we were growing up was TVY7, yes, which meant 7-year-olds could watch it. But now HBO Max it's PG. HBO Max has upgraded it to TV PG, and I'll tell you what, upon rewatching, I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
I absolutely agree. We had no business watching Batman as children, and I'm glad we did.
So that is actually my favorite hand-drawn animated series ever. And it's not just because it's Batman, it's because of the amount of techniques they used in that series.
Oh yeah, no, Paul Dini, all those guys, Bruce Timm, they did an amazing at really translating the Batman story into the animated series, and it was phenomenal. Such
a distinct dark look, and I love that, and it's because they did all of their art on black paper. Yeah, and everything was. I mean, I love the Art Deco style, and it's really cool too because they're very. I like how they're nondescript about where it's supposed to be, but I do remember there was an episode where Penguin got arrested, and they sent him at the end to go stamp license plates. Mm-hmm. And he's stamping it, and it's
The license plate says Gotham, the dark deco state, and that's really exactly what it is. What I thought was really funny about it, though, is that there's this big mix of technologies. You're never sure what period of time Batman the Animated Series takes place, because they've got jetpacks, they've got car phones, they've got cell phones, they've got remote detonators, they've got all sorts of crazy crap. But they've got cars that look like they're modeled from the late 1930s, mid 1940s, and on top of that, they have Zeppelins. The police department has freaking blimps, but not only are they blimps, they're hydrogen blimps. They're hydrogen blimps. So, like, did the Hindenburg incident never happen? We're like, shit, we should probably use helium instead. Like, they're still using hydrogen blimps at the police department in Gotham City.
What they did for that series is trying to model it off of the Batman and Batman Returns aesthetic to give it that look and such, which is what I love. And I honestly love that series. And Kevin Conroy as Batman, he will forever be my favorite Batman. Mostly because of this series and everything Batman I consumed growing up. He was the voice, from this to Justice League, the crossovers with the Superman cartoon, Justice League Unlimited, the 2 movies that came out of the animated series, and Batman Beyond. He was Bruce Wayne.
Oh, no, absolutely. And then additionally, too, I mean, for all of the argument, especially once, the Heath Ledger Joker came out, with all of the, the praise that they gave Heath Ledger, and rightfully so. He played an amazing Joker. As far as a modern Joker was concerned, he did an incredible job. However, hands down, best Joker award, goes to Mark Hamill, 100%. Like, there's no other person on this fucking planet that has breathed as much life into the character of the Joker as Mark Hamill has. He will forever always be the Joker.
Mark Hamill, the extreme of 2 sides, plays one of the best good guys in pop culture history, and Luke Skywalker plays probably one of the best villains in pop culture history in the Joker.
100%. He just best. Hands down best. But then that also is, for the Batman, everyone's like, oh, who's your favorite Batman? My answer is always Kevin Conroy. And they're like, oh, what movie was that? I'm like, I don't know, Mask of the Phantasm, Sub-Zero, like the entire animated series. Kevin Conroy, best Batman, period.
Justice League, and if you actually look, okay, so he is, who my second favorite, at least voice actor Batman has been?
Who?
Anson Mount.
I mean, yeah, that he's in a lot of the the DC stuff. I like that. But that's the thing is, like, they do a good job. DC does a good job overall of, like, picking its cast. What's interesting too is that Spider-Man has also been Nightwing, because Neil Patrick Harris has voiced both Spider-Man and Nightwing.
Absolutely.
On multiple occasions, and he's good at it. He's not my favorite Nightwing, but he's good at it. I like my favorite Nightwing is definitely the original Robin actor from the 1992 animated. I can't remember his name off the top of my head at the moment.
I don't know who it is, actually. I'm going to pull up the cast list, though, because that series had a bunch of great voice actors in it as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All of it. It was great. Like, there's really, I don't know, there's really nothing else to say about it, because we're just going to keep, playing this verbal tennis back and forth, just how great it is. Like, oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. Serve it back.
Sure, it is. And this is
so good.
Something we at all considered talking about today.
No, we literally, this is completely tangential. We not intend to get in here and start, like, fanboying over old Batman stuff.
No, but at the same time, it is a great series, an award-winning series. I mean, yeah, great voice talent that people know even just sitting today. But to answer your question, it was Lauren Lester.
There it is. Thank you. Yeah, great Robin and Nightwing just throughout.
You know what else is great? Shit. I mean, if we're going to keep talking about going on this line and talking about superhero shit, let's talk about the fact that the Superman animated series was also out of the park in the 90s.
With Tim Daly? Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was another great show.
And but in the same way that Kevin Conroy will always be Batman, Tim Daly will always be Superman. I don't care who they cast in the future. And full respect to, Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill, and, but Tim Daly, always going to be Superman, period. Like, he is the best Superman.
Yeah, he's my Superman for sure.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up. Again, that series was what introduced me, more so than the movies. These 2 series introduced me to Batman and Superman, because growing up, the Batman movie, between this series, the 2 series, I didn't have anything. The first Superman movie we got during our lifetime to come in theaters was Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. Yeah,
and what's interesting, too, is Superman Returns had the potential to be such an amazing Superman movie, and and it's hard. Making Superman is hard. It is a very difficult thing to portray an immortal character and really give him a true conflict to deal with. With Brandon Routh, I think what was interesting is that they actually took his measurements, and his measurements for the Superman suit were exactly the same as Christopher Reeves. They had to do almost nothing to get him into the Superman suit.
Yeah, because what they did was they found somebody who looked a lot like him so they could sneak it into that same timeline.
Yeah, and exactly, because I mean, Superman leaves the Earth for a while and all that and disappears. But like, yeah, it was exactly that, and it was great. Like, I thought it was a strong beginning, and the movie didn't really kind of finish well. I'm not sure what happened there. It was okay. I mean, and you know, not to insult the dead because Christopher Reeve's a great actor, but like, you know, his Superman movies were not good.
They were products of the times, because I've tried to go back and watch the first one a few times, and it's hard, but it's because it's a product of the times.
Well, it sucks too, because like Gene Hackman, for instance, Gene Hackman is incredible actor.
Luthor.
But his no, I disagree. I think his Luthor was shit because his Luthor's bumbling. Like Kevin Spacey, you know, for all of the bad stuff that surrounds Kevin Spacey, and rightfully so. But for all the bad stuff that surrounds him, he plays a great cold-hearted psychopath.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder maybe because actually I don't want to. Let's not get a defamation of character. I don't want to. I don't want to go.
That's why I was leaving it at G. I wonder why.
Let me not go so far as to say that, but you know,
So I will say, because I've seen him play other characters like that since too.
Frank Underwood and stuff. You know, he just continues that. And Kevin Spacey did a great Lex Luthor. The movie, but Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor is a bumbler. He's kind of a moron, and I get it because like they didn't want to give Lex Luthor that much credit as a villain, but it's also kind of silly. Like when in Superman 2, when the three Kryptonians are kind of charging Superman in the Fortress of Solitude, and he pulls the fucking cellophane S off his chest and just he doesn't even throw it. He kind of just whips it at him like a tissue paper, and it hits him, just falls over. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? Or at the end of Superman 2. When he kisses, I think it was Superman 2 where he runs backwards and turns back time, and then he kisses Lois Lane.
I think that's three. It's either 2 or 3.
But in the second one, I do remember he kissed Lois Lane and wiped her memory, and I don't recall that being of Superman power.
Look, the best one was the one with Richard Pryor, and we all know it.
Wait, which one was that one?
I think that was actually, it was either 3 or 4 was Richard Pryor.
But like those movies are painful. Like all the Superman movies are really painful to watch, and so it's not like,
I hate to say it, even the ones with Henry Cavill are hard to watch. It's not that it's a fault on him. It's Superman as a character is kind of boring unless it's like, I don't know, a huge apocalypse level threat or a dark side threat.
I love Man of Steel. I thought Man of Steel was excellent. I think that as far as live action movies goes, and I mean it goes kind of without saying because between budget and modern editing techniques, I mean the Henry Cavill Superman movie just kind of has no choice but to be the best one. But I thought as far as Superman portrayals go, it was excellent. It was more or less everything I wanted out of a Superman movie, because short of Doomsday, which they're not going to introduce as a first one because then he's going to die. Who else is he going to fight that's really going to be on his level, save maybe Batman? But, that was great. I thought that, introducing the Kryptonians and doing it how they did it was very good. I got to give it to them.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the movie. I just have found that going back, it's slow and hard to watch for me. And it's more of a product of what the themes of movies were back even that far, 10 years ago, how movies moved.
Pacing was difficult for that movie. It's a lot of exposition and not a lot of action. But, I mean, again, as far as Superman movies go, I don't think we're going to do much better.
No, I don't think so, because everything we've had with Superman since has not been... I mean, Batman vs. Superman and Justice League was the only two with Superman since.
But I will say, though, I just watched the Snyder Cut recently, because I heard all the complaints for Justice League when it came out, a couple of years back, and so I was just, I was not interested as a longtime comic book fan. I just wasn't interested because I heard all the complaints and I'd seen what they were doing and I'd watched enough clips to just say this was crap. But the Snyder Cut, honestly, good job. They really made that movie. They made that movie edible. They that's the best way I can put it.
Just watch it in chapters. That's all I have said to people. I watched it all in one sitting and realized I should have just watched it through the four distinct chapter marks. It probably would have been easier to watch because it was just long, but it was definitely a better cut than the theatrical release.
Yeah,
and
but
what I know about the theatrical release and Joss Whedon, I understand why.
Yeah, no, and it was good. I liked it. I did like the Snyder Cut quite a bit. As far as that movie was concerned, I'm not gonna go back and waste my time watching the Justice League theatrical release because why would I punish myself like that for no reason? But I heard the same criticisms for the Batman Superman. I didn't watch that one either. I knew more or less what the story was about. I knew that they were gonna basically once again be ripping off the Frank Miller Batman fighting Superman, that iconic scene.
Well,
and I knew
look at Batman's suit in those movies. It's
exactly
suit. We already knew that.
Right. I mean, and let me rephrase, because I say I haven't watched it, and that's actually incorrect. I was working at the comic book store at the time, and we would play these movies because they would come out on DVD and Blu-ray and whatnot. So we'd put them on. I was working, it's my job, so I don't really have time to sit there and watch a full-length feature film that's 3 hours long. So I would watch all these movies. I would just watch them in fragments, silently, because we didn't have the audio in the store. But so I mean, I've seen it, but that's what I said. Just from those glimpses, I knew it was derivative enough of Frank Miller's Batman that I wasn't interested in really caring. But I did hear that the director's cut for the Batman vs Superman movie is kind of the equivalent of the Snyder cut for Justice League, and so it might be worth watching if I'm drunk enough.
It is. I mean, I still cannot get over the Martha scene, but that's just me.
Oh yeah, that was stupid. That was really stupid.
Why did you say their name?
Why did you say that name?
Why did you say their name?
I was like, oh, what a coincidence. We have moms with the same names.
So, off-kilter question. Is
Sure.
it DC Comics or is it Detective Comics?
I don't know. Honestly. I really don't know. Because I don't even... I read something recently that suggested that DC actually stands for Dynamic Comics, even though there's a separate company called Dynamic that publishes comics. So I don't know if it's Detective Comics or not.
Nothing I've ever read about their name has always been that it's just from Detective Comics.
It very well may be. I'm not sure.
I just think it's funny that DC Comics is Detective Comics. Either way, comic.
Hey man, I think one of the best depictions of any DC family franchise is Scribblenauts.
Scribblenauts DC was a lot.
That's right. Scribblenauts DC is a blast.
Adorable. I had a lot of fun with it when I played it a long time ago. Holy shit, that game's old.
Scribblenauts in general is a blast. You write in whatever you want and it produces it for you, and it just makes you wonder.
Actually, speaking of DC, I've been playing Lego DC Supervillains.
Oh, how is that?
I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's Mark Hamill's Joker, Clancy Brown's Lex Luthor. So
wait. You're talking about Lego DC villains?
Lego DC villains. Yeah, no, so Lego games have voice acting.
No, but it's not so much that, but Mark Hamill didn't play Joker for Lego Batman.
In this one, it's him as Joker in the Supervillains. Huh. You can tell right away.
Very interesting.
And it's good old Clancy Brown back as the Lex Luthor we all know and love from the animated series, Kevin Conroy's Batman.
So this is not this is them making a Lego iteration of the comic stuff rather than them using the Lego Batman. Is that my understanding?
Lego Batman 3, but it's Lego DC supervillains. So the gist of the plot is the Justice League is transported off-world by the crime syndicate, and the villains are forming their own band to take down the crime syndicate.
Okay.
But the voices are on point. Steve Bloom's sighting as Captain Cold. It's been cool.
Huh.
Arlene's, I think I can't pick out if it's Tara Strong or Arlene Sorkin doing Harley, but it's one of those two because it's the Harley we know, not the Harley from the animated series that's currently running, which is also really good.
Yeah, no, it's funny too because a lot of people don't. Well, I can't say a lot of people. I've from my time working at the store, it came to my attention that a lot of people didn't know this. Harley Quinn is not originally from the comics. Harley Quinn is originally
the animated series.
She was created for the animated series, and she was such a fan favorite that they wrote her in as a canonical character.
Yep, makes sense though. That's how you got to do it. You listen to your fans because Harley is a great character, especially when she's separated from Joker.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, it's and you see it too. Like they really highlight in the very last episode of the Batman animated series. It was called I think it was called Crazy Love or Mad Love. It's literally all about just how abusive Harley's relationship with the Joker is. And so I think they did a good job kind of highlighting. The Harley and Joker dynamic has always been a domestic abuse story from day one.
Oh, yes.
And they didn't sugarcoat that either. They made it clear that Joker was manipulating her from the get.
Yep. I mean, it's addressed even in the current Harley Quinn series.
Oh yeah. They brought that up, and there was also there's the movie. It's there's one of the movies. It's called Harley Quinn and Batman, or Batman and Harley Quinn.
Yes,
and that was a good one because spoiler alert: Nightwing and Harley Quinn fuck in that movie. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty funny.
Yes, I've seen that one. That one's done in the animated series art style.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Honestly, I have nothing but good things to say about all of those movies. It's just all of it. It's all great.
Have you watched Injustice yet?
Yeah, I watched Injustice. It was K. It was.
That's
I
probably
mean,
one of
not.
the weaker ones I've seen of
It's
those
absolutely
movies.
one of the weaker ones. It's not. It's not the weakest, but it is absolutely one of the weaker ones.
Yeah, one of the weaker.
But yeah, I mean, but a lot of those are really good. Justice League War, Justice League Doom, like
Well,
all
War,
of them.
Doom, and there's a couple of others that tie together, and that's all the New 52 movies.
Yeah. Justice League Dark.
Yeah,
Justice League Dark was very good.
Was good. The follow-up to Justice League Dark was good too.
Oh, Justice League Dark War and Apocalypse. That was really good. Yeah. The Constantine City of Demons. That was pretty decent.
That was all right. Green Lantern one, the Jessica Cruz.
Oh, the
Green Lantern-
first.
No,
the
Jessica
first flight?
Cruz, no, the Jessica Cruz Green Lantern Justice League movie.
I didn't see that one. I didn't know they had one.
It's on there, and I can't remember the name of it right now. It's
See, my gripe with
it's a Justice League movie, but with her, they used it specifically to deal with her trauma and the way it affects her as a Green Lantern, and it's done so well.
See, my gripe with Green Lantern stuff is that, like, I am a Green Lantern fan for sure.
I love Green Lantern.
But my favorite Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner. So whenever you tell me, "Oh, Green Lantern Hal Jordan, check out this Hal Jordan," I don't give a shit. I think I love John Stewart. I mean, I'm a Marine; he's a Marine, so like I like John Stewart a lot. It's just like Hal Jordan to me is so one dimensional. And like you have to do it right. Like so, in a couple of stories and movies, they've absolutely done Hal Jordan some real justice, and I got to give him credit for that. You know, because he's a likable character. He's not a bad Green Lantern. I don't hate him, but he's
how in the movies that don't have Flash but have him in with the Justice League and Flash isn't there, he takes Flash's smartass role.
I mean, yeah, because Hal Jordan's a cocky guy. He's an Air Force pilot, so I mean, of course, he's gonna have some quips. I think it's just that Flash's boisterousness kind of overshadows Hal Jordan's Air Force cockiness, and so they play off each other well. But Hal Jordan's definitely more subdued in that aspect than Barry Allen or even Wally West.
Wally West is still my favorite Flash. So
I agree. I mean, again, but it's apples and oranges with Flashes. More often than not, you can't even tell. Like, if you're reading a Flash comic, and unless someone actually refers to him by his first name, if he's just running around being Flash, you can't really tell if it's Barry Allen or Wally West. Yeah, so my point here being is, like, more often than not, if you're reading a Flash comic, unless someone refers to Flash by his first name outside of costume, and you're just watching him run around being Flash, you really can't tell at any given moment whether you're looking at Barry Allen or Wally West. You can't. Because Flash is Flash. At least with regard to those two alter egos, like Flash is Flash, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So it sucks. It sucks sometimes because I like them both. They're both good Flashes. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their own comics. They wouldn't have their own thing going on. But like, yeah, I do prefer Wally West, but Barry Allen is also a great Flash, and so I don't have a criticism. I just like Wally West a little more. And that by a little bit, I mean, like, if we're playing a game of inches, it's like I like Wally West a half inch more than I like Barry Allen. So it's almost irrelevant.
Yeah, they're both really well done characters, and I think all of the Green Lanterns themselves are well done, and each character has their own thing that they bring to the table.
Except for Guy, except for Guy Gardner, he's a piece of shit as a Green Lantern. I like him. I like him as a Red Lantern. He's great at that because it's fitting for him because everyone has always seen him as the bumbling Green Lantern, and so as a Red Lantern, where his power comes from his rage, I think that's great. It's kind of like and for him because he's redheaded, so it's the pent up anger of being the redheaded stepchild that got beat up all the time, and now he can finally be full ginger, so he can be the Red Lantern all he wants, and I think he's very good at that. As a Green Lantern, I think he's shit.
I will give you that. I'm not a big fan of Guy Gardner.
Well, they wrote him to be shit. They wrote him to be like the comic relief Green Lantern. I mean, hell, the advertisements for it, if I recall correctly, the advertisements for the Guy Gardner Green Lantern in the 90s was him floating in the vacuum of space with his leather sleeves cut vest Green Lantern outfit, and for some reason his Green Lantern dog was floating in front of him holding his Green Lantern boot in his mouth, and he's floating through the vacuum of space missing a boot with his toes sticking out. I'm like, yeah, run. Yeah,
no, thank you. Not my favorite.
No, for me, it's always Kyle Rayner. I like creative. He has great light projections. All of his stuff is very well thought out. Plus, he is the only Green Lantern and probably one of the only DC characters to beat the shit out of Thanos.
That's a good point.
Because there was in the 90s there was a Silver Surfer Green Lantern crossover with Parallax and Thanos as the villains.
Yep, I remember that. That was like one of the few times they crossed over. They also had one where it was like a Who Would Win series, but they didn't use any of their big ones. It was like Hawkeye versus Green Arrow.
Well, actually, in the 19, I think it was 96. In 1996, they had a big crossover between Marvel and DC just overall. They had comics for it. They had trading cards for it, where like in the cards you had like Wonder Woman fighting Storm, Batman fighting Captain America. The Batman, there was two. There was a Batman versus Captain America, a Batman versus U.S. Agent. So you had that, and that was a big thing. They had Superman versus Hulk. And so that was a huge thing, and then the universes actually sandwiched on each other, and you got the Amalgam series, and it was literally DC and Marvel working together. So you got some interesting things. You got Defenders, I think it was called Defenders of the Galactic, and that was a Fantastic Four with what the hell was it? It was Fantastic Four mixed with something else, and then you got Spider-Boy, which is Superboy and Spider-Man mixed together. You got I think it was Nightclaw, which was or Darkclaw, and it was Batman mixed with Wolverine. You got Super Sentinel, which was Captain America fused with Superman. So like that they really did do a nice cooperative thing back in the 90s as part of these crossover comics. So that actually was a lot larger than people think. But yeah, that was cool. You know, I miss that kind of stuff because we're never going to see that kind of goofy comic book shit again.
No, it's too competitive now, especially with Disney and Warner owning them overall.
Oh yeah. Those days are long gone, my friend. But it was nice to say that we lived in them.
Absolutely, it's nice to say when we lived in a time when Marvel was an independent company.
Yep.
I guess I can't get too mad. Disney comic, the comic side of Marvel with Disney hasn't changed a whole lot.
No, Disney has not interfered with Marvel's operations too much. All they've done is, they say, hey, we own you, we're going to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, hey, we own you. We take a cut of the profits now. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep funding you. It's kind of reflective of the way you can see that these movies are produced on the Disney side. Most Marvel movies are more family friendly, minus maybe Deadpool, where DC pushes that same rating.
And I know that Batman has historically and traditionally, especially theatrically, been a PG-13 kind of franchise because they always want to be able to bring the teenagers in and bring that in there. But like, I was watching Justice League Dark and a couple of the other like movies that are on HBO Max for Batman and other superheroes specifically. It wasn't just Batman; it's all superheroes. But there's like a handful of rated R animated movies in there.
Yes,
and it's great. My thought is just kind of like, man, they've got these rated R animated movies, and like, how phenomenal would it be if we just got one rated R Batman movie in the theaters?
So, that'd be awesome. By the way, the rated R movies are great, except for The Killing Joke, which is fucking awful.
That movie sucked. That movie, I'm sorry, like that, like
the
that
fucking storyline.
That's one of the most powerful stories in all of Batman comics, and the comic, not to say that the comic doesn't go along the same story or end a certain way, but like, I didn't need 45 minutes of Batgirl, like of Batgirl centric story and her daddy issues with regard to how much she wants to fuck Batman. Like, that wasn't necessary.
Nope.
And it's been implied in different Batman storylines that Batgirl and Batman had some sort of fling. In Batman Beyond, Commissioner Gordon, at that point, Commissioner Barbara Gordon, references that there was a romance between her and Bruce after, Nightwing left the scene to do his own thing. And there's a handful of other ones that reference that kind of thing, but that's kind of like a different canonical universe because it's established that, Batgirl's supposed to be with Dick Grayson. And it always has been. Even after she got paralyzed and became Oracle, Dick Grayson had always held that flame for her, that torch. And so I didn't really need 45 minutes of Batgirl's daddy issues. Batgirl's a strong enough and independent enough character without her having to fuck Batman to give her some validity or to make Batman care about the fact that Joker paralyzed her.
Right.
And violated her. It's not necessary.
No, that movie was awful. One of the we've talked about rare misses and how and we talked about how Injustice was one of those. This is definitely more so a miss than Injustice was.
Well, I felt that with the Killing Joke movie, I really felt that it showed that DC was not keeping up with the times. Mm-hmm. Because, for instance, aside from the sexual connotations and all of that, because we just addressed it, so there's no need to beat that dead horse. But one of those things that I found, I don't want to say like offensive, but just kind of like, it's a bit of a slap in the face, to the gay community. Is like Batgirl's friend is the only gay guy in Gotham City who works at the library. Has an obvious, he has the obvious flamboyant inflection or accent, and he dresses in a way that is like a stereotypical gay dude. And I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, what the fuck am I seeing here? Like, he's the only gay dude in Gotham. Mm-hmm. He works in the library, and he's just set up a certain way. And I'm like, this is not really with the times of... The movie came out in, 2016?
Something like that, yeah.
The Killing Joke, I think it came out in 2016 in theaters, and I'm just like, yeah, this isn't with the times. This is not a modern iteration of a Batman story or of a Batgirl story or of any of it. And I'm like, this... It just doesn't jive well, and like it's and it wasn't written well either. Like the main guy that Batgirl's trying to chase down is a guy named Paris Franz. Like, really, nobody got that pun? Seriously, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's a terrible Batman. It's a terrible Batman story, and it's not. The Killing Joke is a great Batman story, but the Killing Joke as a movie is a horrible Batman story.
Yeah,
horrible
absolutely.
Batman story.
Yeah, as a movie, it was not good. I don't recommend it, and I think. Very, very seldom will I say that I don't like a Batman movie that has Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill in it, because that just alone...
It's not their
fault.
No,
it's not their fault. It's not their fault. They were just the voice actors. They're not the ones who did all the writing and everything else. That they were just in it. But yeah, like I think it really diminished the presentation of those characters that for a long time had been really beloved, and it's just I took my at the time when the movie came out, I took my part. We weren't together back then, but my partner and I went to go watch it, and we walked out thinking the exact same thing. Both of us being Batman fans, like, what the fuck did we just watch?
Yep. I was so hyped to hear about that one getting adapted. I was when I heard,
I was psyched.
The Killer Joke into one of these movies, and I saw who they were bringing in for it, and I was like, oh yes, let's go. And no.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good. I didn't like it. I just didn't. It was not good.
Absolutely not. It's not as. You want to know? Okay. I do have something random to ask. What do you think of John DiMaggio's take on the Joker?
What do you mean, John DiMaggio's take on the Joker?
Red Hood. The Joker in the Red Hood movie is John DiMaggio.
Oh, really? Dude, honestly, the Red Hood movie, I watched that so long ago, I didn't even place John DiMaggio as being Joker. But that being said, like, I like John DiMaggio in just about everything he does, and
thankfully, honestly, he's now involved with the Futurama reboot.
Right, yeah, the third one, or the fourth one now. Are we on 4 iterations of Futurama at this point?
3 or 4, something like that.
I think the first one was the Fox one, the original one. The second one was the Comedy Central iteration. The third one, I think, is when Netflix took it over for like Netflix that. Didn't. Wasn't Netflix?
No, it was on Fox, and then it went to Adult Swim in syndication, and then it got brought back to Comedy Central. So I think we're at the third one, is the Hulu reboot.
I could have sworn one of the streaming services. Is it Hulu then?
Hulu has it now. Yes.
Okay, then yeah, that's what it is. I got my wires crossed on streaming services. So yeah, dude, but I like everything John DiMaggio's in, and as far as him being Joker, I'll go back and rewatch it, and I'm sure that it slipped my radar that in my binging of all this Batman that I've been doing on HBO and all this Justice League stuff I've been watching, that I've heard him. But like I said, I find that DC does a good job even when they don't use their traditional actors. When Kevin Conroy's not Batman and they pick another Batman, I'm never complaining. They always do a good job of picking an actor to do the job.
Yeah, like I think I've said, Anson Mount as Batman's been really good, just as Jerry O'Connell as Superman's been really good.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have too many complaints as far as that goes. I think that they do a fine job. And again, John DiMaggio is one of my favorite actors. I met him at a convention once, and it was the end of the day. I was still working at the comic book store, and we were slated to actually work the convention. So I was, working my booth all day. But because I was working my booth all day, I didn't have a chance to actually go and meet any of the actors or do any of the walking around a convention that I would normally do as a patron. And as we're cleaning up at the end of the day, I look up and I see John DiMaggio kind of loading up a cart because he had a booth. He was doing, autographs and stuff. Autograph booth. And so he's loading up his booth and everything, and we're all of us are packing up as vendors. And I looked at him and I'm like, "Excuse me, sir." I'm like, "Forgive me, you're John DiMaggio." And he's like, "Yeah." And I didn't want to jump right into Bender because I know that sometimes with actors it's their lesser known roles. Because Adventure Time was big at the time, but it wasn't like nowhere near as big as Futurama,
Absolutely.
And it was. It's not a kid's show because like most things on Cartoon Network, like when we were kids, there's always adult content in there. But most people wouldn't peg him as being Jake the Dog, unless they already knew. And so, like, at the time, I saw him and I was like, "You're John DiMaggio." He's like, "Yeah." And I don't know what he was hoping for or thinking. I can't read the man's mind, but I didn't want to jump to Bender. I told him, like, "Dude, I love you as Jake the Dog." I'm like, "I think you're great. And of course, I love you as Bender and all your other roles that you're in as well." And he's like, "Thanks, I really appreciate that." And he's just a really genuine dude, not an asshole at all. And a lot of these people are. You go to cons,
Oh, I know.
And they think they're larger than life because they were on a TV show 20 years ago and they think they're a big star. And to us they are, because we like their content from back in the day. But some people don't realize that eventually all stars kind of dwindle and they diminish themselves a little. But he's super nice guy, and I asked him, like, and I told him, like, "I'm sorry, I know you've been getting this all day long, but I've been working this booth. Like, could you just give me one bite my shiny metal ass?" And he gave me this sly smile, like it was like half fuck you, half, "Man, you got some balls." That was pretty funny. And he gave me a bite my shiny metal ass, shook my hand, and he left. And just super super nice guy. So I mean, I like everything John DiMaggio does. I haven't seen a role of his that I don't like.
Yeah, that's about right. I haven't seen him in a role that I don't like his voice for. He's really good at what he does. And his movie he made was really great, too.
Which movie?
It's called I Know That Voice, and it talks about voice acting.
Really?
Yeah, and it has a bunch of famous voice actors on it, but he put it together and did it.
And what's funny too is that he's done a couple of other roles that people haven't necessarily pegged him in, like that, or because they're just. I mean, again, not for true ignorance or anything. People are just unaware. You don't outside of it being truly presented to you, you're not sure. But, like, dude, he was
Fantasy X.
I mean, aside from that, though,
he was Waka.
Dude, but he was the villain, that pale skinned villain in Kim Possible. He played Aquaman. You're right. He, aside from the Joker, he was also the Scotsman in Samurai Jack.
Yep, he was. He's President Shinra in. No, he's the head of Shinra's security in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
He played Sandman on one of the Spider-Man iterations. So he's done, like, so many cool voices. He was in Gears of War.
Yeah, he was a huge part of Gears of War. He was Marcus.
Yeah, so it's like, dude, like stuff like that, and it's like there's always, like, the two things that everyone knows you for, and it's like they do so much work that is so broad that people just kind of don't think about.
Yeah, you know who it always brings to mind for me? Billy West.
Billy West?
Billy West. So you'll know him best as the voice of Philip J. Fry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or as the voice of Doug Funny on Nickelodeon's Doug.
Okay, wow.
Or as Stimpy J. Cat.
Wow, dude, I just put that together.
Yep, he was also
Holy
Stimpy.
Shit.
He was also Ren.
Wow, no, Ren I can place. Yeah, that makes sense. He was who in Space Jam?
Bugs Bunny.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Billy West is probably one of my favorite voice actors. He's very recognizable in everything he does.
That's awesome, dude.
But yeah, that's who it comes up to me, is that people will know him mainly as Fry and not as much else. Fry or Doug, but he wasn't Doug in Disney's Doug. He was only only Doug in Nick's Doug.
I mean, for what it's worth, nobody gives a fuck about Disney's Doug because that show sucked. Nickelodeon's Doug was great.
So because I have both Disney and Paramount Plus, I've watched all of Nickelodeon Doug with the kids. So we started Disney Doug yesterday. One of the first things they said in the news in the Disney Doug is, "Hey, your voice sounds different to Doug."
That's funny, but that, like, I don't know, Disney's Doug was just such a large departure from what we understood as Doug from. Yeah, because in the Nickelodeon's Doug they had, like, the scat that they always had. It was a completely different presentation. Disney's Doug was more in the vein of, like, Recess, because they shoved it into that one Saturday morning lineup, and they just made it, like, I don't want to say more wholesome. It's not that Nickelodeon's wasn't wholesome and it didn't have a lesson.
The most wholesome thing on Nickelodeon.
It was, but, like, the presentation of the lesson that they were trying to teach you was completely different.
As we're going down these memories in this rabbit hole that we've been doing this whole time of nostalgia and old shows, let's talk about this for a minute, because I got one for you I haven't told you about. I got my kids watching Rugrats.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah, dude. That's great.
They call it Babies. But I got them watching Rugrats, but I realized there's one thing on Paramount Plus missing that I've had the earning to want to watch: The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Oh my god, dude, I miss Pete and Pete. That was a great show. Dude, a lot of that old Nickelodeon lineup, excellent. Hey Dude was awesome. Clarissa Explains It All, awesome.
Those are all on Paramount Plus.
The Secret Life of Alex Mack, or Secret Adventures of Alex Mack. That was a fun. Yeah, dude, Salute Your Shorts. Yeah, exactly. That was a great show. Again, Pete and Pete, because we were just talking about it. That was a great one. Like, there's so many, man. what was the other one,
There
man?
was one that I
oh my
always
God.
mention to people that everyone seems to always forget about because Mark Summers hosted, and we all know Mark Summers from hosting Double Dare.
Are you talking about Legend of the Hidden Temple?
No, I am talking about What Would You Do?
Okay, you know what? I remember that show, but I wasn't a big fan of it.
Where it was studio audience interaction where they do challenges and stuff that involved pies, and they had a pie slide and all this stuff. And they had a
Yeah, I
wall.
remember that.
And what always stuck with me was they had this wall where they got like these lockers, and they could go open up a thing on this wall, and like this hand would come out and do shit, and like it would give you a prize or pie you in the face, and it was always fuzz around the question of what would you do, and he'd pose this situational question. I thought that show was awesome, and I'd love to watch it again.
Yeah, I remember that. You know, it's
Or Nick
but you know,
News. Do you remember?
oh, dude, Nick News. Yes, I remember. I do remember Nick News. That was cool. But you know, and I remember like there were so many good actors that went on to do like SNL and stuff like that, and rightfully so. But like, if you remember like all that variety
Kenan
show,
Thompson.
yeah, dude, Kenan Thompson, Kel Mitchell.
Kenan is currently the longest-serving SNL cast member in its current thing. He is now currently the longest one currently on SNL. He's been on it the longest.
Wow. Yeah, and it's crazy, dude. But I remember like in all of that, they would always like the little news thing. It's like Lori Beth Denberg, and it's funny because you remember these people not because they're famous now, but because they were famous then, and you heard their name so many times.
And they use their
but like.
name.
They use their full names too. They didn't sugarcoat it or give them an alter ego or an alias.
Dude, all that was great though because it was SNL for kids.
It was, and I remember Lori Beth Denberg's my favorite. Aside from the Connie Muldoon thing, she was like, "I'm Connie Muldoon."
Vital information.
Yes, the vital information exactly. And it was like this just in. When left in the sun, mayonnaise grows hair. That was just one of my favorite little segments that she did.
Or super dude.
Super dude. No. It was super dude, and what you're thinking of is repairman. Repairman, man.
You're right.
That was
super
great.
Dude who was lactose intolerant. That was his weakness.
Yes, dude, that was ridiculous. But it's funny because it teaches kids about things about life. Because at the time, you go to school and they just give you milk in your lunch in that little foldable box carton. And I mean, when you were a kid, unless you were lactose intolerant, you were never going to find out about lactose intolerance. The way I learned as a child about lactose intolerance was because of Super Dude and because of Tim Allen's The Santa Claus. Because the kid tries to leave the milk and cookies and. He tries to leave milk and cookies, and he goes, "For the last time, I am lactose intolerant."
Yep.
So he leaves him soy milk, and then of course, by the magic of being Santa Claus, he's no longer lactose intolerant. And it was a great commentary on how soy milk sucked back then. Yep. So he's drinking the soy milk, and he's like, "Oh, do you like it?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's making this awful sour face. Yep. But speaking of SNL too, one thing I did want to segue into a little bit if we have the time is, dude, George Carlin. The first host of SNL, but not even because of the SNL thing. It just prompted me to think about it. But HBO just came out with the George Carlin American Dream documentary, which is fantastic.
And I have not seen it yet.
Dude, I'll tell you what. I'm just so glad for George Carlin's existence because without George Carlin's assistance in any of it from watching him on TV, because I actually didn't get into George Carlin as a comic until way later in life. My first exposure to George Carlin as a comic was when Comedy Central was doing that 10 o'clock uncut lineup, and he had that one special from 2005, and they put it on there, and I just remember watching that, and I was listening to him back at that time on that 10 o'clock the 10 o'clock lineup on Comedy Special that was supposed to be uncut, at least for language, and I was listening to him, and I'm like, dude, I was a 17, 18-year-old, as I'm watching this before I left for the military, and I watched him and I'm like, wow, it's crazy that like this older guy who I just finally started hearing about as a stand-up comic, because I was big into Chappelle and like the what was modern at the time, and I watched George Carlin go on his rant, and I'm like, dude, that's crazy to me that this guy who's this old feels the exact same way that I do about things, and I never got any George Carlin prompting. I never heard any of his nihilistic worldview. It's just the worldview that he has is something that I developed for myself, completely separate of any influence from George Carlin. Yes. It's both refreshing and also harrowing to hear George Carlin go on a rant, and you're like, wow, at the time, because I'm in my 30s, but at the time I was like 17, and I'm like, that's crazy that this really older guy, by comparison to me at the time, felt the exact same way, thought the exact same things, and the fact that he'd felt that way for decades and that nothing had changed. It was refreshing to know that, like, yeah, people had been fighting this fight for a long time, but it was also really harrowing because I'm like, wow, he's still bitching about this, which means nothing's changed.
And that's the thing. One thing I've always liked about Carlin was always his comedy was a more honest commentary of the time that those specials were in. If you look at his specials from the 70s, where he's talking about the 7 dirty words in the commentary and how it's all about just what taboo language is, to where his last couple specials talking about his views on death and suicide and things that back then you wouldn't talk about in a comedy bit.
Well, it's funny too, and I really highly recommend it. Of course, none of us were alive in the 60s, you know, but like it really, the American Dream documentary it's more like a timeline.
Because he started off as a clean suit and tie comic.
And a clean content comic because his mantra used to be that if his family couldn't watch his stand-ups, then he wasn't gonna say it. So he's like, if my family can't watch it, then I will not say it. And so he found that over time he was repressing himself in the way he was feeling, and you know, and without spoiling anything, because it's difficult to spoil a man's life who's, you know, gone, and we've witnessed it for the most part. You know, he said that one of the big conflicts was that he was a somewhat younger comic who was doing comedy for people in their 40s, but those people in their 40s who were in his audience were at war with their own children who were in their 20s. You know, the way he felt about the world resonated more with the people who were in their 20s, and it's probably because he was about in his 30s at that point. He was a younger guy doing shows for older people while believing and you know, connecting with the younger generation and the revolutionary fight. And so it's just, you know, it's just what a character, man. What a person.
Look, man, my first exposure to George Carlin wasn't even his comedy. It was seeing him as Rufus in Bill and Ted, and then his role in Dogma.
And dude, you know what's funny? And I agree with you on that, and I would say that mine was as well, but I didn't recognize him. Like, I watched Bill and Ted, but I didn't recognize him as Rufus, and I watched Dogma, but I didn't recognize George Carlin as being the Cardinal. Like, it wasn't until later.
That because of my mom.
Okay.
My mom pointed out that it was Carlin, so it's something that stuck with me, as this is like the first time I've seen him, because my mom knows who Carlin is. My mom liked Carlin.
Yeah, no, of course, it makes sense. You know, I mean, dude, Carlin is something else, man. Like, honestly, I think that we here at PodThing should just start a new religion, and we should just be we should be the Church of Carlinism.
Yeah, except Carlin himself would have fucking hated that.
Oh, absolutely he would. But it's because, you know, he didn't, but not in the sense, you know, it's a satirical church, not an actual one, of course.
I think that it's also better to have a Church of Carlinism than what Marvel's going to do by digitally inserting Stan Lee into things, most likely, since they have the licensing rights to his likeness thanks to his family.
Yeah, I really, and not for nothing too, with regard to Stan Lee. I mean, I love Stan Lee. You know, I mean, I grew up. I grew up with video. I grew up in the '90s with video cassettes of the shows from the '60s, '70s, and '80s.
Yeah, and even then, the Stan soapboxes from the '60s and '70s are still very, very relevant. I posted one on our Discord server. Links in the description for the episode. You can check a look at that one. It's about civil rights.
Yeah, and it's and you know, that's the thing, is like I do like Stan Lee, and I always liked a lot of, you know, his messaging and what he did. But I'm also a very big proponent of the idea that, like, when someone has passed on, to pay homage is one thing. To manipulate their likeness, to, you know, to do something like that as if they were still alive, it's not really a moral argument, it's more of an ethical one, but I think it's wrong.
No Tupac holograms.
Yeah, I think, you know, like, even for, like, the Carrie Fisher stuff, like, I think for them to, like, do a bunch of Carrie Fisher stuff with you know, the CGI, if they go any further with it than they have, I think they're crossing a line. That's just me personally, though.
Well, I will say, at least in Disney's defense, a little bit with that is it's her daughter that they've done the effects over.
And that's cool, you know. But again, I think that's paying homage. That's why I said if they go farther than what they've already done, I think there's an ethical issue. Like, if they make a whole brand new Star Wars movie and it's Mark Hamill holograms, Carrie Fisher holograms, and Harrison Ford holograms, it's kind of one of those things of, like, yeah, you have the likeness rights and you can do it, but you know, kind of in a Jeff Goldblum sense, like, yeah, you were so busy trying to figure out if you could do it, you didn't ask yourself if you should.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say it because this is something that's recently come out. Disney has said they will no longer recast legacy Star Wars characters with new actors, but I argue they should, because, no offense to Mark Hamill, he's not the 30-year-old Luke Skywalker he was when Return of the Jedi came out, and Disney can use all the de-aging technology they want on him, and I'm glad they are, and they're letting him be Luke. in these expanded series, like The Mandalorian, they really should just find an actor who can play the role. People will eventually
honestly, dude,
accept him. I seriously believe that they should have looked at the fan petitions wanted Sebastian Stan to play Luke Skywalker, and I could seriously see that.
I think they should just kill it, man, because Mark Hamill himself was really unhappy with what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy and the directors and the writers did with his character for episodes 8 and 9. He was really unhappy with that.
Where they're making it more Luke Skywalker, badass Jedi.
And that's cool, but again, I mean, the time for that is kind of past, and I'm not saying that, like, it's not a good thing. I'm not saying that I'm not even saying I want it. Of course I want it. I'm a Star Wars fan.
Mara Jade, you fucking cowards. Don't give me a story about Mark Hamill and de-aging him as Luke. Give me a story about Mara Jade.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that. I'm like, dude, as a fan, yeah, I always want more Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, like Star Wars. I want more of my Star Wars. Again, the time for that is past, and I think
this isn't the 80s or 90s anymore when we really gotten that. What we got instead was the prequel trilogy, where we at least, we luckily have those actors also returning to their roles, like in the Obi-Wan series with Ewan McGregor being Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen returning as Vader.
Right, exactly.
He's also returning to Ahsoka as Vader.
And I think that they do a disservice to I think they do a big disservice to a lot of these actors and characters, and not that because these people aren't, they are not their characters. But I just think that they do a disservice to the legacy of what was left behind. It's kind of like James Earl Jones, for instance, still alive. Brilliant, incredible, phenomenal fucking actor, still alive, still has the same honey-coated, deep, but also intimidating voice. And if you were to tell me that they're doing new Darth Vader stuff, but they're not asking James Earl Jones to, like, at least give something, like to give some sound bites or whatever, they're just going to recycle or use AI with the voice bits that they have and just kind of compile something. The man's still alive. That's a fucking slap to the face.
So they haven't confirmed whether yes or no if they're going to have James Earl Jones in there. They're leaving some things as a surprise in this new series. So there's a very good possibility that he's coming back. There's also a possibility and I'm hoping Disney will do it. I mean, I say that, but the Roddenberrys haven't done anything yet. So before Majel Barrett died, they had her record all the phonetic sounds to be the voice's computer.
Okay.
They haven't been able to implement that into modern Trek because of the way it was recorded. They don't have they're missing some sound, so they have to use AI to recreate it. So it is possible Disney could contract him to record a bunch of phonetic sounds for them to AI together, with it still being uniquely his voice.
See, and I'm okay with that 100%, because at the end of the day too, like, and this is me being a realistic human. The man is 91 years old, and I'm not to take away from any of that, because I mean, you can still be 91 and still be a powerhouse of a worker. You're not going to put this man through his paces. Like, if he's living somewhere on the East Coast, like New York or frickin', Rhode Island or Delaware, you're not going to fly him out to Hollywood to do it. Nor do you need to anymore.
I think his last role was the voice of Mustafa in The Lion King.
You mean Mufasa?
Yes, Mufasa in The Lion King.
Which one? The 94?
No, the remade Lion King.
That CGI one that they did. That was okay.
Yeah, that was, I think, his last voice role. I think. I could be wrong.
And it's taxing. Doing all that stuff is taxing, even as a voice actor. But like I said, if the man's still alive, and I think that they should at least extend that offer to him. And this is not to say that they're not doing that. I don't know. I have no fucking clue. We're just talking about a hypothetical and the ethical ramifications of said hypothetical.
Look, if they're willing to go out there and bring back Hayden Christensen, they'll probably do it. I mean, James Earl Jones has done Darth Vader's voice in most of what Vader's in. So
absolutely. And real quick, I just wanted to make one funny point, because you were talking about how they did all the sounds for the computer for the Star Trek, like the little voice bits. Do you know who the voice, without searching, do you know who the voice of the Enterprise is in the new Star Trek movies, the Abrams ones?
I thought it was still Majel Barrett.
It's Bill Hader.
Is it really?
It is.
That's cool.
I'm sorry. Wait, was it Bill Hader? No, because Bill Hader. Oh, by the way, Bill Hader's also the voice of BB-8.
Yeah, Bill Hader's BB-8.
Which is pretty funny. Let me actually check, because now I have to double check, because maybe I got my wires crossed on that one. So now I have to search. Oops.
I could be wrong. It may not have been her in those because I know she's not the current voice. Which is
Well, Muzzle Barrett's the original, but I feel for some reason like Bill Hader was the voice for one of the Star Trek computers, and they did the voice, and it was it was just like a couple of words like acknowledged, something like that.
Maybe. I don't know. All I know is they should use... I wish they'd find a way to use her voice on Strange New Worlds because it would make sense. By the way, Strange New Worlds, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It is your return to classic Trek form.
Oh, here we go. Hold on. It was Bill Hader was the voice of the USS Vengeance in Into Darkness. That's what it was. By the way, personal opinion, that movie sucked. It has nothing to do with Cumberbatch. It has nothing to do with any of the actors. I thought all the actors did a phenomenal job. They did not do a good job of reiterating the Khan storyline. But here we are once again, getting back to our point from before. There's nothing fucking original. I didn't need Khan. I didn't.
Have one of Khan's descendants on Strange New Worlds. She's the security chief of Pike's Enterprise.
But I'm okay with that because it's a different character, and it's a different character entirely.
You also have young Uhura.
Oh, I'm okay with that, dude. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with all those things.
Spock,
like
the new Spock. Actually, I will say Ethan Peck as Spock is phenomenal.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to sit here and talk a bunch of shit because I don't know. But I did not. I heard some things about the character or the actor who played Spock in the Abrams films. That he was not the nicest person. Yeah, I heard that he was not the most Spock-like offset.
Ethan Peck is a good Spock on Strange New Worlds in season 2 of Discovery. I've really enjoyed... Strange New Worlds has been what I've wanted a new Trek series to be since I started watching the newer Trek series. It's the Monster of the Week thing. It's great.
I mean, dude, honestly, I don't mind Discovery. I had a couple of nitpicky moments as one of the old hat Trekkies of it's not this. It doesn't follow the Roddenberry, Brennan Braga formula and whatever. Things have to evolve. Once we got to season 2, you saw things become a little more episodic. For instance, when Rainn Wilson did his multiple appearances on Discovery, he did a great job, But that was a point in season 2. Season 1 you met Rainn Wilson's character, but then in season 2 he comes back for a recap, and at that point it had become a little more episodic, and they were starting to kind of gently massage the formula back in.
My biggest modern Trek complaint has been Picard.
Okay, that's fair. But now, do you feel like with Picard they're trying too hard to bring back that formula?
No, Picard is not meant to be the classic Trek formula. It is one story of the season, and each episode plays into it. The second season is a lot better than the first, in my personal opinion. It's just some of the things they do, the way it's written. It's not horrible, but it's not... It could be any other cast of characters and these same characters as a sci-fi generic setting and not be Star Trek and be the same show. There's nothing in it that pulls, especially season 2. The only thing that pulls the connection between it being distinctly Picard is Q.
Okay.
That's if it wasn't for Q, it could have been an entirely different series dealing with time travel.
Sure.
Name changes here and there. At least Discovery still has the Star Trek feel and theme of discovering everything to it. I'm hoping season 3, the final season of Picard, is going to be season 3, and they've already announced that Frakes and LeVar Burton and Marina Sirtis and Gates McFadden and the Gen 1, the main TNG cast is returning for that.
Okay. Yeah,
so you see Will Wheaton at the end of season 2, by the way. Just a spoiler.
Nice. Yeah, I will say about the Q thing too. As long as they keep bringing John Delancey back, it's going to be great.
They're not going to after this one, but hey, you'll see why if you watch it.
Oh, is Q gonna change? He's tired of the form? Is he tired of?
Do you want me to spoil it?
No, because we have a show and we don't want to spoil it for our listeners either.
I can cut it out of the show.
No, don't spoil it. I'll just watch it.
You should.
I'll watch
it makes sense, but you'll understand why there's just disappointment to how they're doing it.
I watched some Picard. I'm not caught up. I haven't watched a full season of Picard, but I've watched a good chunk of Picard.
Yeah, and it's not against Patrick Stewart. I think he does great in the role. I just think the show's weak.
Patrick Stewart does great in everything he does, but
Dex still best new Trek.
Yes, agreed, 100%. I love Lower Decks. I think Lower Decks is fantastic, and I think that Lower Decks also allows... It gives a commentary that maybe was unintended. It shows the true military life. Yeah. You have a handful of command grade officers who are just off doing whatever on these little adventures, and they're catching all the glory for it, but all of the hard work, all of the real fighting, all of the technical repairs, all of that stuff is done is done by lower enlisted or by lower commissioned officers who are working below decks to make sure the whole fucking the whole machine keeps running, as it were. And I think that it does a great job of making that bit of like military style commentary of like, yeah, these guys get all the credit, but they don't fucking do anything.
Right.
And like, yeah, they're going on the big adventure, but like they're not the ones doing the real work.
In the interest of adventuring and doing the real work as lower enlisted, like we both were, I think that that's our show.
That's a good way to end it. Just make sure to stay tuned for our upcoming content for Depth Charge and Sports Thing, which we'll have some more information about that coming up shortly.
Or, just surprise releases when they come out. But thank you all very much for listening these last, 2-ish hours?
Yeah, wow.
So, until the next time.
Take care, everyone.